right, ladies and gentlemen, the Palos Verdes Estates Planning Commission meeting for October 18th, 2022 is now in session. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Campisi.
Here.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Nendick. Here. Vice Chair Lazaro.
Here.
Chair Wade.
Here. Okay, before we get started on the agenda tonight, and we do indeed have a long agenda, as you can see, we have 12 items. Some are on the consent calendar that may not remain there, so it'll be a long evening. I'd like to make some opening comments about two things: our neighborhood compatibility process in general, and then the specific hearing process that we'll be following tonight. First, as to neighborhood compatibility in Palos Verdes Estates, the process is intended to be transparent and collaborative among neighbors, a process where the applicant of the proposed project meets with affected neighbors to discuss the project. That's why we have the neighborhood meeting. The parties discuss impacts and concerns that neighbors may have within the parameters of the neighborhood compatibility requirements. And then the applicant considers such feedback and takes reasonable steps to mitigate what are valid concerns. The intent is that all parties, the applicant and the neighbors, will come to the table in a spirit of reasonableness and good faith and be willing to compromise. When this happens, the neighborhood compatibility process can move more quickly and be relatively painless. In the end, our common objective is to preserve the beauty and the harmony of this special place in which we live, and to continue to live together as friends and neighbors when this is over. When this doesn't occur, the process can often span several commission meetings. It can become contentious, and the commission is left to come up with a solution. The commission wants to apply the city requirements and guidelines in a manner that is balanced, consistent, fair, and reasonable, and one in which all parties feel that they've been heard. And we all need to work together to make this happen. Now, the process for the meeting tonight, for those of you who are not familiar with Planning Commission hearings, our process for considering an application has three parts. City staff will present the report on the item, and commissioners will have an opportunity to ask questions. The applicant, that will then open the meeting for public comments. The applicant will have 5 minutes at the beginning and the end of the public comment period to present the project and to offer rebuttal. After the applicant's opening presentation, members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment on the project. Comments will be timed. We have the little timing boxes somewhere over there. I can't see it, but we'll have to move that little box, black box in front to the side so I can see it. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment on the project. Again, comments will be timed, and I'll ask you to conclude your remarks immediately if you run long. We just want to make sure that we give everybody a fair and equal opportunity to make their presentation. If members of the public want to make remarks, please fill out the speaker card, which many of you have done, one of these pink cards, and pass it forward. And be sure to designate on it the item or items that you want to speak to. At the conclusion of the applicant's 5-minute rebuttal, I'll close the public hearing, and the commission will discuss and decide the matter or offer a continuance to the applicant if that's appropriate. So with that, I think we are ready to move forward. So my first item is approval of the agenda. And may I have, let me hear if any commissioner has any comments with regard to the agenda as presented. If not, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda. And a second.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, those in favor to say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved. Now let me move to communications from the public. And at this point, members of the public are offered an opportunity to comment on matters that are not on the agenda. If that's the case, then you'll have 3 minutes to comment on any matter that you wish to address. If the matter is not on the agenda, which is appropriate for a communication from the public, then we cannot act upon it at that time. So are there any, I don't see any cards saying we have matters for public comment.
Mr. Chair, I actually have a general comment.
Okay?
Just very briefly, as I was driving around, I was reminded of the city's code regarding building permit expiration. And the code actually states that construction permits expire 18 months after they've been issued. And I've noticed, I think I've made this comment a couple of times before, we have a lot of projects that seem to go longer than 18 months. And I don't know if they're going through the formal process to renew, but I think that's something that's important to hold projects to. Just if nothing else for the disruption of the neighbors. One that really struck out at me was 1405 via Montemar. And that one has had green fencing up for 6 years. So I don't know what's going on with that one, but I think somebody should take a look at that. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. All right, we will move now to the consent agenda. We have 5 items on the consent agenda. And before we proceed to consider approval of any item, I'll ask whether or not there's any items that should be removed for discussion. And I will request that the third item, which is 2812 Via Campesina, be pulled. Are there other items?
I'll request that the fourth item, 2217 Guadalana.
Okay, and we will pull also the item 4, 2217 Via Guadalana. Any other items to pull? If not, we have the following items remaining. Item 1, which is the minutes of our September 28th Planning Commission meeting. Item 2, administrative approvals on September 22nd. Let's see, Campesina. We have item 5, which is miscellaneous application M155422 pertaining to 4428 Lucera Circle. And I would approve that those remaining items be approved as part of the consent calendar. And if so, with regard to item 5, there will be an implicit finding that we have determined that that miscellaneous application has no adverse impact on other properties, unless there's a member of the public here that objects to approval of item 5. And seeing none, I would move that those items be approved as part of the consent calendar. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Calendar is passed. And I'm going to take up items, the 2 miscellaneous applications after item 8. So we will now proceed to item 8 on the agenda. Item 6, which is 728 Via Salmonte, applications for neighborhood compatibility grading and miscellaneous. It's my understanding that the applicant in this case has requested a continuance to our next regular PC meeting, Planning Commission meeting, scheduled for November 15th. So do I have a motion and a second from the commission to continue this particular application?
I'll make a motion to continue.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, item 6 is continued to November 15th. Likewise, item 7, which is 3936 Via Solano, applications for neighborhood compatibility and grading. And once again, the applicant in this matter has requested a continuance to our next Planning Commission meeting, regular PC meeting, scheduled for November 15th. So once again, do I have a motion and a second?
Also moved.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So item 7 is continued to November 15th. Item 8 is 2108 Palos Verdes Drive West, applications for a variance and neighborhood compatibility. And it's a trifecta. We have one more applicant requesting a continuance to November 15th. So may I have a motion and a second to do that?
I'll motion to continue item 8.
I'll second.
Okay, in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 8 is continued to November 15th. So we will now move to, I think it's item 3, which is miscellaneous application for structures exceeding 8 feet in height and structures exceeding 42 inches in height within the setback adjacent to a street at 2812 Via Campesina. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Wade and members of the Planning Commission. Good evening, members of the public. Tonight's presentation is for a miscellaneous application for encroachments in the public right-of-way. I'd like to make a quick correction to the staff report. Upon further review of the city's municipal code, height is measured from natural or existing grade. There are no walls that are exceeding 6.5 feet in the front yard setback or on the property for that matter. Additionally, there are no walls that seem to be exceeding 42 inches within the front yard setback as well. I'd also like to go over a brief history of the project. This project was heard in as part of a neighborhood compatibility and grading application, which was approved on May 17th, 2022. As such, the walls and encroachments in the public right-of-way were included on the in the plans, but a miscellaneous application was not submitted for the improvements. Therefore, the applicant has submitted a miscellaneous application, and it is before you today. Overall, staff's recommendation is to approve the miscellaneous application with the conditions that are laid out in the resolution before you. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for me at this time. Thank you.
So could you restate the city's position or the city staff's position on the encroachments in the front yard setback?
So the city's the city does not recommend approval for the encroachments in the public right-of-way. So ultimately, since the walls in the front yard setback don't require a miscellaneous application, I guess the city would be required to write up a new resolution for denial, since the encroachments are not recommended in the front yard, or are not recommended.
Okay. Questions for staff?
So, was this approved at the city council level when the project was ultimately approved?
The encroachments were not.
No, sorry. The project, though, I think it was appealed to city council, and then a version was finally approved.
Yes.
At
yes.
city council.
Yes.
Okay. And so the encroachments you're saying were on the plans, but they should have been part of a formal miscellaneous application.
That is correct.
Okay. Were they part of a miscellaneous application when it was in front of the planning commission, or it just wasn't there at all?
No, there was no miscellaneous application for the encroachments.
Okay, because I think technically it was, you know if it was appealed? Was it denied?
It was-
And then it went to planning, to city council, or it was an appeal?
It was approved by Planning Commission, but a member of City Council, I guess, appealed it by taking it up,
I see.
for review before
Yeah,
the
because it had
City
a
Council.
slightly complicated,
Yeah.
okay, all right, okay.
Okay, other questions for staff? If none, I have, looks like at least one card, but I also think Mr. Rigg wants to speak on this issue, too. Do you?
Turn in a card on behalf of the applicant.
Ah, there it is. Oh, it says item 9. All right. If you wish to speak on this, let's go ahead.
Yeah, my presentation. Yeah, I actually did turn in 2 cards, one of them for item 3 and one for item 9.
Okay.
You know, I'm not totally sure. I think it's,
Oh, there it is. All right.
I don't know what you're seeing on your side of the screen, but I'm seeing
I think this part,
a red sunset.
so I guess the front is,
That's the front there, that's the driveway.
yeah.
Oh, it's a tent. Jeffrey, can I have the presentation that I emailed in today? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you so much. Understood. In the interest of time, I can start, and then we can go to that when it's up. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Alan Rigg. I'm representing the applicants for the project at 2812 Via Campesina. Steve and Megan Selig are in the audience this evening, and hopefully I can take care of this and they won't need to speak. To answer the questions, this project was approved twice by the Planning Commission with the encroachments in the public right-of-way shown. It was approved twice by the City Council with the encroachments in the public right-of-way shown. A condition of approval of both those was that a miscellaneous application for the improvements in the public right-of-way be formally submitted to the city. There's also 2 conditions within the conditions of approval that require a license agreement for those encroachments to be approved. And so it was contemplated, I would think, at a minimum, that these encroachments were approvable by the city. Otherwise, the project would have never been approved. What I wanted to show on the screen is that the improvements are necessary to have a stairway to go up to and a driveway to go down into the home. The home has a subterranean garage. It has a rather wide right-of-way, and it has a large upsloping slope, as you're going to see here in a second, on the south side. So if we do not have these approvals, then the driveway ends up being up to 25% slope and unbuildable. So the findings, as mentioned before, you can see here how steep the existing driveway is with the wall. And so our design slopes down into a subterranean garage and then a walkway up to the first level. Next slide, please. And then if we hold those grades at the public right-of-way, we end up with a 21% and a 25% slope. The findings for encroachments in the public, non-standard encroachments in the public right-of-way is simply, as you stated, that it does not create any adverse impact on any party, which the only potential party would be the city, which is why we have the license agreement to protect the city in the event that something did happen. Approval of non-standard encroachments in the public right-of-way is not something you do every meeting, but it is something that, as a matter of precedent, the city has done on multiple occasions, including the most recent one that I've got in my recollection at 844 Via Del Monte, in which there were extensive walls for both the driveway as well as for the stairway. So we see this as something, a matter that needs to be cleaned up. It was reviewed by 4 different times, at least by the Planning Commission, the City Council. Nobody had an issue with it. It's necessary for our design, and we would hope that you could change the condition of approval within the resolution attached to the staff report and remove the two conditions of approval that would effectively deny the non-standard encroachments in the public right-of-way. That will conclude my comments. I'm available for any questions.
So currently, there's a wall on the south side of the driveway that appears to be in excess of 6 feet.
Yes.
Is that in the front setback? You know?
The wall that's in the public, I thought, and I appreciate the staff's comments that we don't have any structures over 42 inches in the setback adjacent to the street, but the way that the setback works, it goes parallel to the home, and I think we do have structures above 6.5 feet in the setback adjacent to the street.
So they already exist?
No, they're proposed.
Well,
I'm going to go back. I don't know if those existing walls are in excess of 42 inches or not. If you can go back to that, past that last slide. You can see that's,
yeah, up by the white truck is what I'm talking
Right.
about there.
so, and it didn't sound like staff had any concerns with the findings for the setback, the structures in the setback adjacent to the street, or any of the other walls that are needed to support the driveway. It was just with the encroachments in the public right-of-way.
Is the area that is outlined in green and marked number 3, is that essentially in the same spot as where those walls are now?
Yes.
Okay, so it's more or less a replacement for the existing walls, simply,
It is. They're a bit taller, but yes, they're in the same location.
okay.
And then they're extended towards the street in order, because the new driveway slopes down as opposed to up. You can see how the retaining walls are already needed for an upsloping driveway. There's even more of a need for them on a downsloping driveway.
And so the difference is, I think there's also a planter, whereas there's no planter now.
Right. The landscape architect determined that to put a break rather than have a taller wall, to break it up with a planter would be less massive and be better for everybody.
Okay. And so to the extent that the wall is essentially built into a hillside there?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
I have a quick question, Mr. Rigg. On one of the items that you've submitted here, number 1 with the red outline, is that the encroachment itself, that entire red area that is labeled number 1?
You know, I didn't print out a copy of that. The circle closest to the street are the non-standard encroachments in the public right-of-way, yes.
Okay, thank you. So basically, part of that new wall that extends from area number 3 in the green is a new encroachment into the right-of-way.
Correct.
And is that the entire encroachment, or is there, what else is encroaching other than that retaining wall?
May you, could you go to the next slide, please? So the wall along the south side of the driveway,
Stairs.
and then the wall along the north side of the driveway, a portion of it, and then the walls that support the walkway, the up and down portion between the horizontal and the street. So a small portion of the walkway that comes directly from the street. That portion requires steps, and those are non-standard encroachments in the public right-of-way.
Thank you.
So how high are those walls, roughly?
I believe they're approximately 6 feet on the south property line and approximately 4 feet on the north property line at a maximum. So they taper up, they taper down and become taller in height starting from the back of the driveway apron.
Okay, thank you.
That's measured from existing grade, though.
Right.
Correct. Well, not necessarily. Those are measured from the grade that's a bit different than the existing grade because there is grading.
Sorry, I misspoke. Proposed grade.
Correct.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Rigg? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Do we have any other speakers on this item? I don't have any other cards. All right, seeing none, I guess, Alan, you will have another 5 minutes if you need it. Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing and begin our discussions. Who would like to begin?
I guess I'll start. Procedurally, this one has been a little bit strange with the kind of ping pong back and forth between us and the city council. And I think at least part of that was caused by the applicant, trying to make some last minute changes but it is what it is. I tend to worry about subterranean garages and big retaining walls. I mean, we've seen it a few times recently. They don't look great a lot of the time when they're built, because it creates sort of this tunnel effect, like you're some Star Wars looking spaceship or something. But however, I think in this particular case, because it's upsloping, it's part of the overall design of the house. It was on the plans. I think we should approve it. I mean, again, it's something I think we need to look out for in the future, but I think in this particular case, it makes sense, and it's what they need to actually build the house as it's been proposed.
Yeah, I think I would share the same sentiments. There's been no effort to hide this condition. In fact, through several proceedings involving this property, it has been lowered. So I fully appreciate that where there are walls now for a driveway that elevates, that house has been dropped down significantly. So we do have a lower garage, and we have a slope certainly on the south side. So while I share co-chair's concerns about approving these, I don't rush to do it, but by the same token, I think we have unique circumstances here. I also note that in the City Council's resolution adopted on June 28th, items, well, I guess it's conditions 29 and 30, basically says no structures within the setback adjacent to the street which exceed 42 inches without approval of a miscellaneous application, and likewise, no non-standard encroachments without approval. So, I mean, obviously, perhaps there was a contemplation that this matter might come back to us, and now that it has, I think under the circumstances, I think we should approve these conditions.
I think I can approve too how the staff has it conditioned, because I think you have to have the walls, and really they're so tight for the driveway when you do it off natural existing grade. Most of them are not too tall as far as I can see. The big concern becomes in the actual city right-of-way, and I think there's standard conditions there, and they're there for a reason. So you're putting pilasters and things there, I don't think it's the best thing to be doing. So I agree with how staff has conditioned it.
I think
No, I think your mic was on, Ginny. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I was confused.
I think that the terracing mitigates the height of the wall to some degree. I think that helps with the planters.
Yeah, I think I can get behind supporting this. I think the height of the walls as you go down the driveway towards the garage itself are far enough off the street to sort of lessen the impact of what we're talking about here. And so my other concern was the height of the walls in the encroachment as you're coming off Campesina onto Horquila. If that was going to be, higher than might cause a safety issue or sort of a visual impairment, but it doesn't seem like that's the case because it is pretty far up onto Horquila. So I can get behind supporting this.
Okay, I think we have a consensus then in favor of approval of the miscellaneous application. So would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, just for clarification, did you want to approve the resolution with the added conditions, or?
No.
Okay.
then I was doing with the added conditions. My big concern are the pilasters, where we had said no gate, and that's one reason it got written in, that there was nothing there, number one. And number two, to be fair to code states that this is an open space permit, so I think we need to do it properly, however we're going to do it. That it's not a miscellaneous app for in the parkway. It's a open space. I just looked it up to be certain. But in any case, my thing are the pilasters. Beyond that, I understand the stairs and everything else.
So, okay. So you'd eliminate the pilasters, okay. Which are essentially close to the entrance of the driveway? Those?
What's,
Oh, I see one.
There's two.
There's 3 feet.
I see two. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. The one on the left is 3 feet tall, right?
Yeah, but, sorry, that's not in the front setback. That's in the city right away, the parkway. So that's why I just,
So there's 4 other pilasters up the sidewalk?
I'm not, well,
On
the
the stairs.
pilasters that's in the front setback, correct?
So you want those eliminated as well? No?
I'm not talking anything about the front setback. I'm only talking about the parkway
So it's the 2 pilasters
on the drive.
on the drive? Okay.
Near the labeled driveway top and driveway
Right.
top, right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion about that? Or do you want to make a motion to approve, less than accept those 2 pilasters?
I can do that if people are fine with that. I'd make a motion to approve the application with a condition that the 2 pilasters in the parkway be removed.
I'll second.
I'm sorry to interrupt again. So would you like to remove any of the added conditions that we've added on the resolution?
So let's be specific, which ones are you,
Number 11.
doggone thing to work. Hold on here. Which 4? To number 11, there we go.
The landscape plan?
The non-standard encroachments are not permitted?
Wait, what's
Where is-
number 11?
Number 11.
What-
Right, I think
What
yes.
number is that?
The answer to that is
Yeah,
yes.
number 11.
11.
It is 11?
And there is somewhere in here a provision for a license agreement, is there not, for encroachments?
Oh, I see.
If not, there should be.
So all of number
23.
11 is eliminated, okay.
That's number 23 is the license agreement?
Let's see here. I don't see,
I believe that's in the resolution that was previously adopted.
Yeah, that's
Number
number
12,
23.
isn't it?
right, okay, that was previously adopted.
That's correct.
Do we need to restate it in here? This one?
Yeah, we can. We can add it back.
Yeah,
For this.
let's add it back and eliminate 11.
And then include the condition, for not the pilasters.
Correct. Okay? So we have a motion, we have a second. In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Rigg. Okay, we will now turn to item 4, which is a miscellaneous applications for structures exceeding 8 feet in height and structures exceeding 42 inches within the setback adjacent to a street. And the property address is 2217 Via Guadalana. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. Tonight's presentation is for a miscellaneous application for structures exceeding 8 feet in height and structures exceeding 42 inches within the setback adjacent to a street at 2217 Via Guadalana. Just for some clarification, the applicant requests a wrought iron fence, gate, and stucco pilasters in the front setback area facing the street, which exceeds 42 inches. The front setback area where the proposed fence, gate, and pilasters are located faces southeast, which encloses the front yard and driveway of the property. The applicant is also proposing walls and walls with rails on top on both sides of the property lines facing northeast and southwest, and a wall with rails on top in on the northwest side of the property line. These proposed walls and rails will not exceed. And that's all. I'm sorry. And this concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any more questions you have for me. Thank you.
Okay, questions for staff?
So the walls along the side of the property in the front setback, on the sides, they're solid, correct? Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I understand that the city has a policy, I think it's dated November 18th, 2003, pertaining to stacked walls and structures, which I assume is still in effect. That's on the city website.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I want to go back to your question, Commissioner Nendick, about the front-facing wall. Is that what you were just asking about, that it's solid wall? Because on the attachment here, the front gate shows not a solid wall.
Right, but scroll down some, and then you'll see a drawing,
I
and
think
it
on the
says
side
front setback.
setbacks.
So
Or the side
the front-
walls.
It's in the front setback,
Okay.
okay, on the
Right up in
sides.
here and right down in there.
Right, but the street is
Yep,
to the
over
right
here,
of
but
that.
this is still in the front setback.
Okay, gotcha.
And these are solid walls.
Okay, you clarified it, thank you.
Okay, I do have a card as we open the public hearing from Jim DeRosa, who is the applicant. Jim?
Good evening. I want to first state that I am listed in the staff report as the applicant and also the owner. I'm not the owner of the property. I represent them. Just want to be clear on that and put that on the record. There's no wall without a railing that is stucco wall or pilaster that is greater than 6 feet on this property around the entire perimeter. The wall in the rear property line and coming back a little bit on the sides was dropped down to basically a curb above the grade so that we could have a railing on top of that, and that would lessen the impact on adjacent neighbors' views looking out towards the west. As I said, the side property line walls are less than 6 feet, and as you approach the front property line within the front setback, the solid walls that Janine was talking about are 4.5 feet. The fence, which is only 5 feet, that's about my shoulder height, is predominantly across the whole. It's about 60% of the front property line, and that is an open design so that it's not impacting. We're not trying to build a fortress. It's not impacting the neighborhood with a big stucco wall. The gate, the driveway gate, is six feet, and the adjacent pilasters are also 6 feet. So, we've tried to keep it low and less of an impact on the neighborhood, and the owners want to have a little bit of safety with respect to the front property line. So, we hope that you approve it based on the findings, and that's all.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Mr. DeRosa? So you are the applicant, though, eh?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions for Mr.?
Yeah, Mr. Rosa, how far back is the front wall from the curb?
From the curb, I believe it's about 15 feet.
And have you had any you've reviewed this with the neighbors in the neighborhood?
We weren't required to, and there hasn't been any comment or contact with me or the owners.
Okay.
I did provide a photographic vicinity map, if you will, showing adjacent properties that do have walls that, or pilasters, or even hedges. Sometimes the hedges last longer than the walls that exceed 6 feet.
Okay.
You mentioned wanting to minimize any potential view impact on neighbors. Which neighbors would even potentially be impacted?
Well, the ones to the northwest and south, I'm sorry, northeast and southwest, although minimal at best, because the house to the northeast extends out further than our property, than the residents on our property, and the house to the south west is about even with it. So, to bring out a wall all the way out to the edge of the property line, the corner of the property line, could impact their views to the north and to the south.
Is that 221 you're talking about?
Well, 221 would be the northeast. I'm not sure what the address is to the southwest.
So there are currently no walls in the front setback now, or pilasters?
That is correct.
Okay. And your abutting neighbors don't have solid walls or fences?
No, the 2221 to the northeast has existing pilasters that were approved. Those are around 6 feet, and with a light on top, it's over 7.5.
Okay, you say they have pilasters. Do they have a fence?
No, they don't. There's just pilasters there. I don't know that. I don't think there was ever any plans for a fence. If there were, that it was not installed.
But they have a hedge there, do they not? Goes across the front?
Yes.
What's the reason that this is coming to us now and it wasn't part of the original plans that were submitted?
The original. I'm the designer. I was picked up during construction. The original architect was let go, and I was hired to do the hardscape and some improvements on the house.
Okay.
Okay, if we have nothing further for Mr. DeRosa, I have no further cards on this matter. If anyone else wishes to be heard on it, please send a card forward or signify. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll close the public hearing and begin our discussions.
I think for me, the reason I brought this up, for me, the reason I raised it is it's a policy issue, and I think we have to figure it out, because the policy that the chair said says the following is a direction from the City Council to the Planning Commission. In general, solid walls over 3.5 feet should not be allowed in the front yard setback. If the neighborhood has a preponderance of fences with pilasters in the front yard setback, then the Planning Commission may allow similar improvements in the front yard setback. So I appreciate very much that the applicant gave us the photos. So I did talk with the applicant about this. They supplied photos in the neighborhood, and so I went to the Home Association to see what was approved. And for 224 that's shown, it has retaining walls less than 42 inches. And then to the right of the garage, a fence was approved to enclose the pool for safety on the side of the home. 2201, it's a corner lot, and in 1985 they were allowed to enclose the rear yard with a wall and a gate after the home and garage, but not the remaining street footage on Via Guadalana or Via Nogales. 229, the gates, pilaster, and fence are not in the front setback per PVHA. And 2221 has 2 pilasters approved adjacent to the driveway, but no fences were approved. So with this information, I think we need to, if we have policy, do we follow policy, or what do we do?
Yeah, I share your concern. I think that the City Council has spoken on this, and I think the conditions that Commissioner Nendick just read are the elements of guidance those two items on solid walls in the setback, and basically a prohibition against fences, gates, and pilasters across the front of the property. I think it's pretty clear that we have, that this would contravene the policy. I also noted that there was one other house. Commissioner Nendek has mentioned a couple, and given the situation as far as how they came to be, there's another house at 2241 in Guadalana that does have a front gate, pilasters, and I'm not sure whether it's a solid wall or a fence with vegetation. Don't know how that came to be, but I looked at the homes in the neighborhood. I looked from Via Nogales to Via Acalones along that stretch of Via Guadalana, and I only saw two homes that had a fence, pilasters, and a gate in front, and that was 2229 and 2241. So of those 23 homes, I can't say that that's a preponderance of the neighborhood. I think if we are to honor the City Council's direction and their policy, then I think for these reasons we need to deny this application insofar as there are solid walls and the front fencing, gate, and pilasters in the front setback.
I think I would agree. I think that there are times where we approve this sort of proposal, but there's usually some sort of specific rationale for it, like it's at a four-way stop sign or something else that's creating a condition that, either some sort of noise or security concern that's kind of specific, and I don't think we have that, and I don't think that we have a preponderance of the condition either.
Would the ordinance prohibit a hedge across the front there?
It's a policy, not an ordinance.
The policy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think a hedge is not in our,
It's not within our,
Yeah.
what's before us tonight, I don't think we can
yeah.
we can correct the situation. Sadly, there may be other options for taking the fencing and the solid walls out of the setback, in which cases this becomes academic, which the applicant probably will look at if we deny this.
I'm fine with the other walls around the.
Yeah, I have no issue with this, with the side walls behind the front setback, be they fence or solid wall or a combination. I think that's fine, and maybe there can be some, should I say, north-south walls, if that's correct, or east-west walls to the side walls, but outside the front setback.
And are we confident that those sidewalls don't create any sort of a view impact?
I don't think we know. So I don't think we can, we certainly can't say that there's, based upon a lack of evidence, that there's an adverse impact on any other property. So I think I'm inclined to approve the side walls, the rear walls, subject to removing any side walls and the fencing, pilasters, and gate within the front setback. And I would so move to approve the miscellaneous application with those conditions.
I'll second it.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. All right. Get to my next item, which will be item 9, which is 1320 Palos Verdes Drive West. Applications for neighborhood compatibility, miscellaneous, and grading. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Wade. Tonight's presentation is for a neighborhood compatibility, grading, and miscellaneous applications for a new single-family residence located at 1320 Palos Verdes Drive West. The applicant, this application has most recently was heard at the September 28th Planning Commission meeting, where it was continued due to various concerns. Since the last meeting, a couple of changes have been made, which are outlined in the staff report. And staff's recommendation is also in the staff report, along with any added conditions to the proposed or the resolution. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for me at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for staff from the commission? If not, we have, let's see, I have 3 cards. They all purport to be for the applicant. Alan Rigg, Fabiana Ananth, and the architect. Who would like to open for the first 5 minutes?
Mine says neighbor.
I'm sorry?
I'm representing the neighbor.
You're representing the neighbor, okay. I'm sorry. All right. Well, I guess we'll ask the architect and Fabiana.
Yeah, I'll just. Hello, my name is Bijan Clearly, architect. Before I got into some of the architectural issues, I wanted to have one of the owners, Fabiana, come up and speak.
Good evening. Can I have the PowerPoint up? So our project is at 1320 Palos Verdes Drive West. Next one. Next. Huh? So we move our house forward to create outdoor living space in the back. Also, another goal is to increase private backyard family area for our family.
Could you speak up a little bit louder, please?
Sure, it's loud here. Maximize white water view, corridors in the front. We did some changes from the last meeting. We moved house back 2 feet. We narrow front patio by 2 feet, and we did a silhouette that was asked to show the patio and the planters. We can skip the next one. So I'm going to let Bijan explain the lines and the. Thank you.
So as per the last meeting, it was requested that we silhouette the patio and the planter in the front. We did move the house approximately 2 feet back. You'll see on the revised plans we're now at 71 feet for front yard setback. Most of the left post represents that, the post with the red and yellow lines running. That's approximately 2 feet back from the original silhouette, or the previous silhouette. We also proceeded to redesign the front deck and patio and planter. We increased the area right in front of the front door and narrowed the planter the patio at the north and south sides by 2 feet. So between moving the house back 2 feet and reducing the width of the patio, the front of that patio actually was moved back a total of 4 feet. So if you go to the next slide. You can see that the top of the parapet on top of the patio is the red line, and the approximate height of the deck is the yellow. You can see from this image that it's pulled so far back, it's entirely out of the view corridor from the neighbor. Also, the blue line below is roughly the height of the planter in front of the deck and parapet wall. If you want to proceed to the next slide, actually keep on going. So in summary, the house has been moved back a total of 17 feet. The front patio was narrowed by 2 feet. We've made a number of other changes over the duration of the project. In terms of privacy, the windows were relocated and or removed on the south side to provide and protect the privacy of our neighbor on the south. View impacts were entirely mitigated or eliminated, and to achieve this 17 feet, we actually had to redesign the ADU completely at the back of the property. Do you have any other questions?
Okay, questions for the architect?
I have one. When you put the flags up that we asked you to, did you do that off the site plan?
The site plan and the survey.
Because the survey and the site plan are different.
Exactly, yes.
So when I was measuring off this site plan and it measured correctly, but then the survey showed that the existing grade is actually a foot difference, and therefore that the flags would have been up another foot. So I just want to be,
So it was a combination of both. The site plan shows proposed grade and natural grade, and then the survey shows existing grade. So there are a number of contours. This planter did not align, the planter and the deck didn't align with any data points, so we had to try and extrapolate exactly what height we would start from. And it's give or take a few inches. I believe you were out there measuring.
right, I did, and I appreciate that you let me measure.
It's
It just-
really,
something visually was off, and
Yeah.
so then when I saw, for the first time, we have the actual survey, and the survey shows, compared to the natural grade, a foot off. So therefore, that would make these walls up a foot higher, so that's all I'm trying to figure out.
from our best guesses, using all the data in front of us and the lack of data points on the survey, they're very close, within a few inches. As close as the surveys you normally get aren't always
And
exact.
I guess one other question, the applicant mentioned possibly not putting the glass up there. Is that something we're still discussing, or what?
There's a number of options. Well, I mean, the glass, the little parapet around the patio now is solid. That's actually just a design feature. You walk up into a nice deck or patio, and you don't want to necessarily just want to fall off the edge. So I've provided a little 18-inch kind of solid parapet. It can be turned into a bench or planter, whatever, something to define the exterior of the patio. The client had mentioned glass, 18 inches of glass to define the patio. It kind of doesn't make any sense. It actually might be a hazard. So either we can go up 36 inches with a nice glass guardrail, or 42 inches with a nice glass guardrail, or my design preference would just be stay at 18 inches, a solid parapet around the patio.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question. With regards to the front patio area, there's a basement area underneath that?
Directly below the patio area is a storage, basement storage, mechanical.
What's the ceiling height in that?
I think it's, well, it depends on how you, what the structural engineer comes back with, but just over that storage area, maybe 8.5, 9 feet, it depends.
Is there a possibility of lowering that patio and having a few steps out of the front door to that patio?
That is actually the biggest issue. The moment you start introducing these steps outside of something is the less people will actually use them. In front of the front door, that's kind of a non-starter. But if you're asking about the areas on either side, we could, but one of the goals of this project is to actually use some of this property. And by providing those steps is just the use of those front patios will be exponentially less, to the point of, just get rid of them.
Okay, other questions? All right, hearing none, we'll go to Mr. Rigg.
Thank you and good evening again. Alan Rigg. I'm representing the property owners next door to this, immediately to the south, the Dahlhausens at 1324 Palos Verdes Drive West. They've asked me to support the project tonight, even though they have impacts. They're tired with the process. It's been exhausting, and they really treasure the relationship they used to have with the neighbors. They'd like to get back to that, and so they're here to support the project. They do share the concerns about what the silhouette of the front railing is. It seemed to be 1.5 feet lower than what they thought it was going to be. I know that the applicant wants to go forward with this, so we would be happy with a condition that essentially said that the existing silhouette be measured and certified, however it is, and that the front railing of the patio be limited to whatever they've silhouetted in the field. So they're fine with it. Rather than telling them to go silhouette it again or to certify it, they'd like to help them go forward. There's 4 conditions on vegetation that we'd like to suggest. I've been communicating, as the chairs suggested, with the applicant and their representatives. I think we're real close on well, I think we're good on 3 of the conditions, and the one might need some modification or debate. First condition would be the removal of the front 2 Italian cypress along the side property line. The second would be screening vegetation along the length of the building, as suggested by their representative last time. We would ask that to at least be 12 feet in height. So screening vegetation and eliminate the 2 Italian cypress. I don't know if it's entirely within your jurisdiction, but if you could recommend that the street tree, if any street trees are planted, we'd hope that there would be none, but if there were any, that it could be as close as possible to the south property line. And then finally, to protect that view across the front yard, we would ask that vegetation in front of the home, and that would be including in the planter, to an elevation no higher than 107. And we believe that that will impact some of the views if it went up to 107 across the property, but it would allow them vegetation in that planter and elsewhere in the front yard. And when I spoke with Bijan earlier, they don't want to impact their own views, so I don't think that's going to be a significant impact on them, but it would be it would assuage my client's concerns that there not be vegetation that grows to the sky and destroys their views. So I think we're good. Those are our asks, and with those we would support the project as modified. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, Alan, as long as you're there, let me just get those 4 conditions again. The first is removal of the first 2 cypress towards the street.
Correct.
The second one would be a 12-foot hedge running where?
Along the building, along the side of the building,
Is
the
that
south side of the building.
outside of the building, not down where the planters are?
No.
Patio?
No.
Okay, 12-foot hedge.
Yeah, that's to screen the large mass, and that was suggested by Jeff Lewis at the last meeting. Although he didn't say that height, he suggested landscape screening.
No specification as to the foliage?
As to the what?
Type of foliage?
No.
Okay.
I'm sure the fire department will weigh in on that.
All right, and then vegetation no higher than 107 in the planter?
In front of the building's facade, so within the planters and anywhere in the front yard or right-of-way.
And again, no street trees, which we don't have control over. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I understand. Thank you. Would the applicant like to return for another 5 minutes, or up to 5 minutes?
If you could go back to the slides, please. Slideshow, please. Jeffrey. Oh, there you go. So if you keep on scrolling through, keep on going. Oh, is that the last one? You go, keep on going back. Back. There you go. Stop. There you go. So that's the current south side. The conditions have been discussed with the applicant, with the owner, and they are on the same page as the neighbor. A lot of them they agree with. We are at the mercy of other powers, Parks Department, Fire Department, to the point where a lot of this is moot. So there is existing vegetation as well, over 12 feet now on the south side. We would like to maintain it. We'll see what the fire department says. In terms of mature vegetation, we would love to put screening material on the south side that it likely will be nixed by anything above a few inches will be nixed by the fire department, but more than happy to offer it. Some screening vegetation that grows up to 20 feet, perfectly fine, although it would block any of those windows completely, but we would offer some mature vegetation. That would be something that would be agreeable. The 2 cypress in the front, as you proceed, if you actually in the slide, if you go up more, no, sorry, that's down. Keep on going up. Yeah, there you go. Those first 2, I completely agree, they can go. Check that box. In terms of the vegetation height limit in the front yard setback, 5 foot would be acceptable in the front. The planter gets a little dicier. We don't imagine anything to block the applicant's view. Again, they're on the same team here. So 107 seems a little bit, excessive. We would ask that if there was a height limit set in that planter, it should be the height of the parapet wall, which is 109.5. And the there was the silhouette of the patio and the deck mentioned in the planter, but again, that was requested. It was erected to the best of our ability with no hard data points and verified. I think Commissioner Nendick thinks it's too high. The neighbor might think it's too low, so we don't want to use that as a data. It just is a rough approximation of what we're proposing.
Okay. So how high is the front planter now?
Proposed is 105.5, which is 30 inches below the deck, because we want to make sure that there's no larger fall from the deck or the patio than 30 inches, because they need a full height guardrail by building code. So 108 for the patio and 105.5 for the planter.
So just to be clear, I think it's 1 foot too low.
Oh, okay.
That's what I was saying.
Okay,
It's fine.
So low or high, you can see that it's fully outside the view of the neighbor. Actually, that planter is well below the hedge, and the hedge looks like it's give or take 108. Those are our asks that we fully agree with. Removing the 2 cypress. We fully agree with screening vegetation in the side yard setback. We fully agree with a 5-yard limit in the the front yard, and we fully agree with some sort of height limitation in the planter, just something that's reasonable, so that that the city's not bothered by coming out every time we exceed the height by an inch or 2.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
The yellow line is the height of the patio, and the yellow line also seems to be the height of the hedge, right?
Yes. I mean, it's hard to.
Anyway.
Yeah. The yellow line is the height of the patio.
And you said that there might be some vegetation that you plant sort of along the parapet, basically?
Oh, no, below the patio. Oh, you mean along the parapet, like if that little became a planter?
Mm-hmm.
We could just make it a bench, just something to define that patio, sit down on.
Stone or
Yeah,
something.
a stone cap. I think on my drawings I have a stone cap. Usually I prefer a little bench.
Mm-hmm.
You get older, you like to just relax, sit down.
And from there to the planter, you said is about 3 feet?
From the yellow line down to the planter, we don't want to exceed 30 inches. So that's the 108 to 105.5.
Okay.
And then 18 inches above, of course, you'd have to do the math, so
Okay.
2.5, 3, 4.
Okay. Other questions? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and begin our deliberations.
I think that it's basically approvable. I am a little bit concerned about the vegetation on the parapet. I think we'd want to just say that that should just be a stone feature, a bench, something like that. And I guess the vegetation in the planter would have to be somewhere between 2 to 4 feet before it started to become a problem. But, having some sort of reasonable cap there, maybe we say 2 feet and, might grow a little.
I think
Go
that's
up and
exactly
down.
what
Yeah.
the neighbor is saying, 107,
Yeah.
which is 2 feet.
Anything above the hedge creates a problem.
Right.
So if you stay below that hedge, which is about 2.5.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's
Um,
2 feet to be safe.
The only other thought I have is, I think even if the fire department might modify it, putting in the other screening requirements seems to make sense, and then, at least that condition is there. Again, if the fire department says, absolutely not, that's sort of up to them, but.
Right.
But
Right.
we kind of put in our 2 cents, so to speak. So, but, at that point, I think we could approve it. I mean, the only other question I have is, should we, condition it on what's physically presented there? I mean, if it's off by a foot, that's not completely insignificant, but we're kind of down to almost splitting hairs.
Yeah, I think I agree with Commissioner Nendick. She said certify this silhouette at the height currently and make that a requirement. And I would also limit the height of the parapet, I guess, it's currently 18 inches to no higher than that.
Yep.
And the vegetation, I agree, we can condition it upon removal of the first two cypress, vegetation no higher than 107 in the planter. Not sure elsewhere. I don't know how that, if you look at the front property all the way down to the street, that's I can't
It
visualize.
slopes down, so it actually does seem reasonable. Like anything above, it's pretty tall. Anything above that, if anything, it should be even lower. The only concern with certifying it off of that is, what if it really is a full foot? Then they've either got to lower the house or they've got to put a step in, right?
Well, but I think the problem is, the neighbors right now are in agreement with the height of it.
Yeah.
So if it causes a modification in the structure, if they've gotten it wrong, then I don't think the penalty shouldn't fall on the neighbor. It's basically said, okay, we still don't like it, but we can live with it as it currently is presented.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Nendick that the silhouettes there certified those heights. The Delhausens have looked at them and said, okay, we can live with that. And that way we don't have a situation where all of a sudden the Delhausens say, wait a minute, it was supposed to be
Off
here.
by 2 feet or something.
Yeah, it's 2 feet higher, and it's already quite high
Yeah.
from the corner of their house.
Yeah, and I'm not completely sure why it just wasn't done entirely accurate in the first, but yeah, I don't know. I would almost be inclined to maybe throw in a 6-inch leeway, just so they don't have to come back to staff and have a lot of questions.
If they need them, well,
'Cause-
I'm not sure we should create
yeah.
the leniency at this
Yeah.
point. There's a
Yeah.
problem, maybe it's addressed administratively.
I mean, the 107 gives us a measurement certain, so why don't we stick
Yeah.
with that?
107, yeah.
Yeah,
107, because down at the bottom of the lot, it's at 97, so that's 10 feet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you can grow
Yeah.
things.
So I guess worst case scenario, they would have to lower the house, right? I mean, that's basically
Or
the
the- or just the
outcome.
patio.
Or put a step in the patio.
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm fine with that.
Oh, okay.
So I think we have the makings of a consensus and a resolution. Would somebody like to venture?
I agree, I won't venture, but I will say that I did a site visit at this property and next door at 1324.
Yes.
Yeah, as did I. I went to the neighbors at 1324, and being that they're submitting their approval with the conditions that are being discussed, I am inclined to support this as well with the conditions that we've discussed.
Yeah.
And I think the 107 height is reasonable as well, and like Commissioner Foster says, gives us a clear number on the height.
So is that 107, or is that as silhouetted?
I think it's as silhouetted is what we're actually saying,
Yeah.
yeah. Because, yeah.
I could say as silhouetted, but the 107 also is lower than the height of the parapet, so
Right, right.
it's up to you on that one.
So was the red line the height of the parapet? It was, wasn't it? And then there was the lower yellow marker,
So 108
That
was
was
the,
patio.
108 was the patio, if I recall correctly. 109 and a half is the parapet. And then 105 and a half is the planter.
Okay. Okay, maybe you need to restate your motion. Now that we're totally confused. Sorry.
I thought you stated it.
Yeah, no.
And we also have the additional
Yeah.
condition.
Right, right. Okay.
You go ahead.
All right, I'm gonna try this. I would move that we approve the neighborhood compatibility and miscellaneous and grading applications for 1320 Palos Verdes Drive West, subject to the following conditions: that the patio and planters silhouetted be certified, and those be the heights not to be exceeded. That there be the height of the parapet not to be exceeded specifically by any glass or other fencing or anything like that on top of it. I would also require the following additional conditions. A 12-foot vegetation hedge between 1320 and 1324, roughly a height of 12 feet. That the first 2 cypress trees, and I'm going to get a direction messed up, but towards, on the what is that the south side? I think
Front of the house, yeah.
the front of the house be removed. That the vegetation be not higher than 107 in the planter and elsewhere in the front of the house. And also subject to the additional conditions in the proposed staff resolution. That cover it?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. It's a difficult one, but I think this is a case where the parties finally came together and were able to work out a resolution that maybe not everyone's totally happy with, but it allows the project to go forward and the neighbor to be satisfied, and all indications are is that you can have a great relationship with them, and I hope that's the case. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to our next item, which is item 10. Oops, is that right? Item 9. Item 10, where's Montemar? Item 10, here we go. Item 10 is a neighborhood compatibility application for an addition and a new second-story rear deck to an existing single-family residence at 1609 Via Montemar. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Wade. The application before you is a neighborhood compatibility application for an addition and a new a new second-story rear deck to an existing single-family residence. The proposed second-story deck is approximately 216 square feet, and the applicant is also proposing a 12.5 square foot second floor addition to accommodate a pantry. The findings that must be made are outlined in the staff report, and staff's recommendation is also outlined in the staff report. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Aren't they also asking for 600 square feet under the house?
They are, but that's not included with the purview of the neighborhood compatibility application.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll begin our public hearing. Ben Cawthon, I guess, is here to speak for the applicant.
Good evening, Ben Cawthon. I think this is pretty straightforward. We actually, I guess the one thing, hopefully the correspondence from the neighbors, hopefully were able to be dispersed to you, and you were hopefully able to see that. I know they were last minute. Those, it kind of goes to show we really have the neighborhood support. I think the only one we're missing is on the south, but he was in complete support. He's just not at the house. His house is still under construction, but we do have support from all adjacent neighbors. And we actually did have to work to make a change, which unfortunately would have to be a condition added to this. And it was actually in one of the correspondence from the neighbor to the northeast. And we've actually already re-silhouetted this for the neighbor, and they were in support. We just didn't have time to get those plans here to the city and revised. But basically what we did is we aligned the deck with the house. If you're looking at the floor plan, second floor plan, A102, we straightened out the deck, basically cutting it in 4 feet to create more privacy to our neighbor. We left the stairwell there, which they were fine with. We just pulled that deck back 4 feet. And I think in the correspondence, they actually attached the revised plan. So if we could, if there's no opposition from the planners, the commissioners, I would hope that we could make this as a condition of approval so we could get that approval tonight. But I think, this just goes to show the owners worked hard with, meeting with the neighbors and even at the last minute. It was hard to get a hold of these neighbors, and the owners did their best to really meet with these people and get their signatures and support. And that's what we want, is happy neighbors in the end of this project.
There you go. Okay, I have a document, Mr. Cawthon. I think it's from Jimmy Kim. I think this is the change that you were talking about. So the movement of the deck back, that would be towards the west, the northwest corner, I guess, northeast corner.
Northeast,
Been
correct.
moved back 4 feet, and not exactly sure what the dimension is. I mean, it lines up with the side of the house, but I can't tell what the dimension is on the portion that extends to the north.
There's basically a landing, so the deck width is 9 feet off of the face of the building.
Right.
So it would be a 9 foot by 4 foot reduction, but there will still be a landing there.
Okay, got it.
I think if you made it a condition saying the deck to be moved over in a line with the house, or 4 feet, whatever, I think that's a pretty simple, straightforward.
9 by 4. But that wouldn't define, I guess it's 4 feet over, right?
Yeah, whichever is easier for you.
All right.
That's the width of the staircase?
Exactly, yes. So the staircase would stay because that's really our only way to get access to the rear yard without going into the back and ruining it. So the neighbors were, understanding that nobody's hanging out on the stairs, they're hanging out on the deck. So cutting the deck back creates the additional privacy that they were looking for without, completely making this unable to be built.
Okay, additional questions for Mr. Cawthon? None? I don't have any other cards. Does anyone else in the audience or the present here tonight want to speak on this matter? Okay. Mr. Cawthon, you have another 5 minutes if you want them.
No,
Great.
Only if
Thank
there's any
you.
questions. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and begin our deliberations.
Mr. Chair, briefly, the resolution, looks like didn't make it into the packet. So we printed out copies, and that's what's being distributed right now, is a copy of the resolution.
Okay.
Is this just one?
Mr. King, does that resolution include the amended plans with the 4 feet, or do we need to condition that?
Actually, I'll defer to Jeffrey on that.
That condition would need to be added.
Okay, thank you.
Oops. Go.
Dead trees.
Was. Okay, and again, the reason for the new resolution?
It just wasn't included.
Wasn't included.
It was, yeah, it just inadvertently wasn't
All right.
posted with the staff report.
So I think, I'm obviously very comfortable with the solution to the deck issue with Mr. Kim, the side neighbors, so and there being a lack of opposition otherwise to this project, it's quite limited. Most of the, there's a minor addition, most of the work's inside, and the only real issue, I think, affecting anyone else would be the balcony, and there's no opposition to that. Mr. Kim is satisfied, so I think with the agreed-upon modification to the deck, I think I'm prepared to approve the project as conditioned.
I agree. I just want to say, I did do a site visit to 1609 via Montemar, and I saw, so I can understand how it's pulled in, and I think it's a fair balance for everyone. I take it it's a 4x4 landing, right? So they're pulling it in 4 feet.
Yeah, it's
and
not
9
really,
feet one way, or
that's
5
what I was
feet.
struggling with, but I think it is a 4x4. Is that right, Mr. Cawthon?
Is that right? So basically, you're pulling back 5 and in 4. Perfect. Thank you.
I also met with the neighbors behind, at least one of the neighbors behind, and they didn't have any opposition to it at all.
And Mr. Campisi and I also talked to Mr. Kim about this and observed the proposed deck as modified, so.
Yeah, I can get behind supporting this.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve it as we discussed, with the modification.
Okay.
The reduction of the deck by 4 feet 5.
I think they're pulling it in 4 feet and back 5 feet.
So it's in line with the side of the property,
Correct.
the north side of the
And
property.
there's a picture, can you say, from the architect, I assume, the new drawing?
Yeah, we can include that.
Chairman Wade, I've talked to the architect, and tomorrow he's going to provide me new PDF of the plans with the deck pushback, along with hard set of plans.
Okay, very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Finally got an easy one, Mr. Cawthon. Okay, we will now move to item 11. Actually moving along pretty well here. 7:30. Item 11 is a proposal for a wireless telecommunication facility within the public right-of-way adjacent to 300 Paseo Del Mar. May we have the staff report, please?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Wade. The following application is for a wireless telecommunication facility for a new wireless facility located within the public right-of-way adjacent to 300 Paseo Del Mar. This application type is for a new small-cell wireless facility. The applicant is looking to install a 17-foot steel pole and attach 2 antennas to said sign. All of the equipment vault and radio unit will be installed underground, which will serve the proposed small cell wireless facility. Staff has outlined the conditions for approval within the staff report. Additionally, 5 alternate locations were studied by the city and the applicant, and it was determined that this location will provide the best service for the area while also being furthest from residences and is least visually obstructive. The recommendation for this application is outlined in the staff report, and the conditions of approval are also included with the proposed resolution. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have for me at this time. Thank you so much.
Questions for staff?
I have a couple of quick questions. So where is this land actually city-owned?
It is.
Okay. And the pole that's there right now as an exemplar, that was installed by Crown Castle?
That's right.
Okay. It looks, kind of beat up. So it's not an existing pole. It was something they brought on site.
It's a mock-up, yes.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. And they're proposing that all of the electrical equipment is underground at this site?
That's correct, with the exception of the antennas, which are on the...
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The last question I have, and maybe I can ask them this, but there's no wires, RF guides or anything like that proposed here. Do we know if that's just because they don't have that detail essentially, or?
I would ask the applicant.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I have one question. The mock-up that they showed, is that the height of what they're proposing? Because it looks shorter than 17 feet.
It should be the height of the...
Right.
Are you talking about the mock-up that's out there now?
Yes.
No. It should be the height of the proposed unit.
And the proposed is 17 feet.
Yes.
Other questions?
Yeah, that is the exact location where the mock-up is? That
Yes.
footprint? And then the equipment would be, if you're looking at it, to the left?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, other questions? If not, I have 2 cards for the public hearing, Mr. Dang with Crown Castle. And I also have Stephen Garcia. Looks like Mr. Garcia.
Good evening, Chairman Wade, members of the commission, Stephen Garcia for Crown Castle. Tonight, unless needed, I'm the only speaker for Crown Castle. And I just want to take a quick look back at our history for this location. So it was just amazingly 2014 when I first met with Alan Riggs, who at the time was the Public Works Director as well as a staff member. Since that time, we've looked at various locations for this particular situation, ASGO2, and 7 years later, we think we found the location that would be compatible with all the city's guidelines, as well as the review ordinances and visibility to homes. But I wanted to let you know I was the original applicant back in 2014 and 2015 and have been the same applicant since that time. So there is a lot of continuity and a lot of lessons learned the hard way. So if I could, I'd just like to say we respectfully request that members of the commission approve WTA 1-22 and resolution PCR 2022-1310. The reason being, according to PVE Municipal Code 1855.220, Attachment E, it asks these 6 questions. Does the proposed facility interfere with aerial or underground utilities? It does not. Does the proposed facility interfere with traffic visibility? It does not. Does the proposed facility cause vehicular access issues? It does not. Does the proposed facility cause safety hazards? It does not. Does the proposed facility violate any law or regulation, state, local, or federal? It does not. Does the proposed facility significantly impact the aesthetics of the area? It does not. Again, this is actually, if we go back to 2015, this would be the 8th location that we've scrubbed carefully. And at this point in time, we think this is the best location. Unlike what's mentioned in the staff report where it says that there are homes 200 feet, I think those may be homes overlooking Rat Beach. But the homes that actually are on Via Alomar are approximately 400 or more feet from the proposed facility. And in most cases, there are trees or other obstructions that would actually prevent them from seeing the facility. In addition, this location was originally posed 1,800 feet from its current location. So as you can see, we've made continuous compromises to find a location that does not impact residential views or impact the neighborhood character. At this point in time, I'd be happy to answer questions of the commission and or staff. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Garcia?
Hello, Mr. Garcia. I have a few questions. How many antennas exactly are proposed for this?
Yeah, as indicated in the staff report, there are 2 panel antennas proposed at the top of the pole. That pole is proposed at 17 feet, and the mock-up is designed to match that height for your perspective.
What are the scenarios where additional antennas might be added? Can you tell us which service provider this is for?
This is for AT&T.
Okay. What are the scenarios where additional antennas might be added?
Well, I think the addition of antennas is unlikely given that the low height of the facility. I think what you'll find is that if we added a co-location tenant, Verizon, T-Mobile, or any other customer, that we would just replace the antenna for additional ports at the base of the antenna, and that would allow us to accommodate multiple frequencies from multiple carriers. And that's currently what we're doing in Rolling Hills and Rancho Palos Verdes at many locations.
So the form factor of the antennas wouldn't change, but they would just be reconfigured essentially?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then as far as, I asked about the cables, we've seen some that are really, nicely done. You can barely tell there's cables there. And then there's others that droop down. And to be fair, I don't necessarily think it's Crown Castle doing the droopy ones, but would you guys be willing to agree as a condition that everything will just be to maximum tolerances as far as getting the cabling in?
Yeah, I sure would, and I'd be happy to provide photos of our other existing locations, just to be sure that's consistent with what your objective is here, and then also follow up with staff and/or commission just to show the as-built conditions reflect what you're asking us to do today.
Okay. And then what color would the pole actually be as installed?
Well, there's typical in Palos Verdes Estates it to be painted mission brown. In this particular case, I think it should be a dark green.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of blends in with the foliage in the background. So at that point, you wouldn't see the pole. The pole in the photo simulations that you have on your package is a little more obvious, just because we wanted to see the contrast between what's existing and what's proposed.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'd recommend a dark green or the mission brown that is typical that the art jury has recommended in the past.
Okay. And then the signs on the pole right now in the mock-up photographs, they're very small, the radiation emission signs. Are those accurate? I mean, they, ballpark, it looks like they're 4 inches, 5 inches.
Yeah, I was going to say they're approximately 4x4, 4x6. They meet the FCC requirements. It's supposed to be at the height of the pole so that as you approach the bottom of the antenna, you see the sign.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd only be somebody in a man lift that would actually need to see that, not someone on the ground.
Okay. Okay. Would you be willing to condition the approval tonight that the pole would not have more than 2 antennas on it?
Certainly.
Okay. As a going forward condition?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But if they were to add additional carriers in addition to AT&T, did you say, Mr. Garcia, that would not require additional antennas, that those additional units would be added into the existing footprint of that antenna?
Yeah, so what happens is that right now we have a vault, equipment vault, so the radios are placed inside the vault. So the only limiting factor would be how many additional radios can be added inside the vault. But the antennas themselves would simply be replaced for the same size panel antenna, but additional ports are inside the bottom of the antenna, so that allows them to feed each carrier's specific frequencies into that panel antenna so that you co-locate, but you don't need to add additional antennas.
Right, okay. Yeah, because I think it's a good condition, Mr. Lazaro. Do you have any other questions, Mr. Lazaro, or is it?
The only other question I had, some of your facilities have red signs on them in an emergency call Crown Castle. Do they have to be red?
I can't confirm. I can't say that they do or don't need to be red.
Okay.
I've seen different colors.
Yeah, maybe hit them with some spray paint.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll call if there's a problem.
Okay.
All right.
I have a question about, in the staff report, it talks about the signal levels are lower than industry guidelines suggested to support customer needs. How do you and your client at AT&T go about looking at this, and then how far does this antenna serve? I mean, is it going all the way up to 1,000 feet away? Is it more than that? Can you tell us?
Yeah, I think what you'll find with 4G small cells and 5G small cells that the service area does shrink each time another facility is added in order to reuse the frequencies. So the service areas shrink. That's the reason that there are more sites that are needed in order to give you the bandwidth and customer experience that you should be getting when you're paying hundreds of dollars per month for each wireless device. As far as the search goes, as far as signal level, there's a constant recording of signal strength by all carriers, by Crown Castle as well as the individual carriers. And they basically have a radio frequency equipment in these cars that drive the entire city of Palos Verdes Estates as well as the entire peninsula to see and confirm signal level strength throughout the peninsula. And that's where they know where they have the weakest signal and the greatest concern for customer experience. And so that's where they prioritize or set priorities for those specific areas based on the signal strength. and the handoff capability to other sites in the area. So it's an ongoing testing that happens at least once a year, and by Crown Castle as well as the carriers.
So I think I guess behind that question is, how much does this solve the complaint for those residents within whatever a mile, half mile that their cell service is lacking? I mean, is it going to be a noticeable improvement and then all of a sudden we're good for this area and we won't see an application, perhaps for many more years?
No, I don't think that'll be the case. So what we're finding, and this is based on customer demand, it's not carriers speculating or hoping that they'll get customers. Basically, customer demand is driving the development of these services and sites throughout the communities. So as they add 5G services, those service areas shrink, more sites are needed. But that's the reason we need to go through this lengthy location or alternative design location search just to find something that could work. It's going to be most likely the case in Palos Verdes Estates where some areas just can't be served given the limitations or restrictions that you have on locations and visibility. So,
thank you.
Sure.
Other questions for Mr. Garcia? All right, hearing none, we'll conclude the public hearing and proceed to our deliberations.
I thought we had another
Thank you.
speaker, or
Nope.
No other
I
speaker?
don't, Mr. Dang is not speaking.
Oh, okay.
Only one speaker for Crown Castle.
Actually, I did have one other question then for Mr. Garcia. I apologize, just really fast. Some time ago, I think we had you here and we had talked about like a master plan for PVE. Did that ever go anywhere? And is that potentially still in the works? Just to to kind of follow up on the previous question, to bring a little more predictability maybe to neighbors who might either want better service or might have concerns.
Yeah, that exercise with Palos Verdes Estates has been paused for quite some time. I will say that we've reinstated that process with Rolling Hills. They have a similar situation where they don't have vertical elements that we can attach to, and the only option is street signage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working with Rolling Hills HOA or Homes Association to develop a master plan. What we asked Rolling Hills and what we would ask PVE is that we identify 3 design types and then identify streets and signs that we could go to. And then what you would do is basically say that all streets except these streets, and if you have sites that you don't, or streets that you don't want signs on, that you pre-approve the location, meaning the streets, and then each sign would have option 1, option 2, option 3. That would give us the predictability to go back to our customers and say, if we're on this street, Paseo del Mar, at this height, this is what we could get. And it's not going to be open to discretion anymore because we meaning Crown Castle and the city, agree on a standard. Standard 1, standard 2, standard 3. That way we're not going to have to go through, does this work or not? And also, more importantly, you've told us where you don't want us to go.
Interesting. Well, it might be worth talking about that at a future meeting or some other forum. Pre-approval sounds hard, but I certainly think that the concept broadly of a master plan where we identify sites where you might want to build, and then maybe we have like a community hall meeting or, something where we identify, is there generally opposition or generally support, could be useful. So maybe we can follow up on that.
Yeah, and again, we're starting that. We just started that 2 months ago with Rolling Hills, and we're also in that same early stage with Rancho Palos Verdes. So be happy to join forces here.
Okay.
Thanks.
I just have one last quick question about the vegetation that's surrounding it, because I went out to the site and the vegetation is quite tall. I would say that it's probably 14 to 15 feet high, with the mock-up being 17 feet, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is there any scope of work about maintaining that vegetation, or is that completely separate? I don't know if Mr. Graham, you might be able to answer that. Because I read the correspondence from the neighbors, and I would argue that perhaps the vegetation blocks the view more than the pole, and so I'm just curious if.
Yeah, well, all I can tell you is that we wouldn't impact the vegetation, so it would be maintained as is. as long as that's native vegetation that's growing on its own. So
Right.
we're not planning to do anything addition to that. We would just make sure that our construction does not impact it, because it is the best backdrop for that
Right.
facility, especially if we paint it to match.
That was my take as well. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, no further questions for Mr. Garcia?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll close the public hearing and begin our deliberations. Would somebody like to make the first comments?
We had one objection letter from Mrs. Bankin. I met with her when she had a misunderstanding of where the new location was.
Right.
And she was thrilled with the new location, so she's okay.
I did the same site visit, and she's very happy because previously it was in front of them, so thank you.
Yeah, I can confirm that. I emailed her to set up an appointment to come visit, and she said, well, I was mistaken in the location. At the current location as proposed, she has no issues. So we can confirm that Ms. Balkin at 409 Via Media is not objecting to this proposal. Okay.
I visited the front yards of the other two homes on Via Almar, 308 and 320. Those are both in opposition of this, and my opinion and experience there was that, and I wasn't in their home on the second story, but there was a lot of trees and other stuff between them and that 300 Paseo Del Mar location at the cul-de-sac there. So their input is appreciated, but I'm not sure that a 17-foot pole that far away really impacts as strongly as perhaps they're insisting it is. And so that's just what I wanted to say.
I didn't visit the two properties on Via Almar that were in opposition. One, I did my level best with Google Earth to determine how far away that was from the proposed location, and it's, I think Nancy Browning is about 800 feet away uphill. And there did seem to be a number of trees and other obstructions in the way. I did not identify the location of Mr. Charlton, but I understand he's on Via Almar, and every location that I could map on Via Almar is the closest is about 630 feet from the proposed cell facility. If you look at the other alternative locations, they're either more visually impactful or they're closer to residences than this one. So I feel quite comfortable that we have the right location in this case.
For the record, Mr. Charlton's at 320 Via Almar, so just 4 doors down from Nancy Browning.
Okay.
I believe.
I think that I agree. I think that I could support approval of this with some conditions. And actually, just very quickly, a question for staff. So would we own this pole and we'd be renting it to them?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that, with the condition that we can find this aesthetically acceptable, on the assumption that it doesn't grow beyond 17 feet, on the assumption that it maintains the 2 antenna configuration and that all of the radio equipment and electrical equipment would be underground as proposed, that it would be painted, and so, basically all the things we just spoke about, then I think it would be appropriate and sort of the least impactful design. We've seen previous designs in years past near here. So, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually.
I'd like to direct you to the resolution with added conditions. There are a couple conditions that address some of Vice Chair Lazaro's comments. Most notably, 18 directs the applicant to paint the pole a flat dark brown, and this is per the art jury's direction. We can change that if it's in the commission's interest. Also, there is a condition directing the applicant to have all cables run within the pole or be placed underground in an underground vault, except as minimally required to connect to the antennas. And I believe that there are some other requirements that Public Works has incorporated as well. I'd also like to state that the the city attorney has reviewed these conditions in accordance with the requirements of 6409, or the wireless. The city is required to follow strict wireless review requirements, so to speak. And so I will say that the conditions before you are within those requirements.
Okay.
Thank
So it looks as though the only condition we need to add is the one about two antennas, max.
Two antennas in the height, yeah.
Do we want to go with the green color?
I think we can leave that to the Homes Association.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Should I give it a shot?
Yeah, I think, I would add two more points, and that is, in terms of the city code, I think we need to note for the record that there are, as the applicant has said, no grounds for denial under section 1855-220E3 of the municipal code, and also that the proposed location is more than 200 feet from a residential building, making it a preferred location under section 1855-210C1A4. So I think we are fully compliant with the PV municipal ordinances.
All right. I will move to approve the WTA 1-22 wireless telecommunication facility adjacent to 300 Paseo del Mar with the conditions proposed by staff, and with the additional condition that the facility always be maintained at or below 17 feet, and that the configuration remain in a 2-antenna configuration going forward as well.
I would second the motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, believe it or not, we are down to our last item of the evening. This will take us a little while, I think, to get through this matter, so I think what we'll do is take about a 5-minute break and reconvene here. And we'll take up our last item this evening, which is item 12, 1505 Chelsea Road. We have applications for neighborhood compatibility, grading, and a sports court. So, before we start, I have 10 cards, and I would ask if a prior speaker has basically stated your position, unless you have some special circumstances pertaining to you and/or your property, please don't be redundant. If you just want to ratify somebody's previous comments, that's fine. Come to the podium and just let us know that. But we don't need to have every comment repeated. So let's start with the applicant. I'm sorry. Let's have our staff report. Getting ahead of myself.
Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, this application before you is for a neighborhood compatibility grading permit and sports court application for a new single-family resident and sports court at 1505 Chelsea Road. I wanted to make a correction to the maximum building height. I had down 29.88. I believe it's 2467, in which the 120.88 is the maximum ridge height and 96.21 is the natural grade. The characteristics of the project are included in the staff report. Also, the findings are included in the staff report. If the Planning Commission makes the required findings in support of the project, staff recommends adoption of the resolution included to approve the project as condition is in order. That concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, and the corrected building height again is 24.67?
24.67. The 91-foot natural grade, you can refer to sheet AO.3.
0.3. Okay, questions for staff? Hearing none, we will open with the applicant, and the applicant is represented by Lisa Nanta.
It's Risa Narita.
Risa, I'm
Risa
sorry.
Narita.
All set.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Risa Narita, registered architect and the applicant of the
Could you
subject-
please speak a little bit louder right into the
Okay,
microphone for us?
I have a voice that projects, so I'll
Yeah.
try. But,
We need to work on our sound system here.
I'm the applicant at the subject property at 1505 Chelsea Road. Thank you for your time and your presence tonight to discuss our design proposal for the property. A brief introduction about the project and the owners, Ed and Kristen Feitzinger. They were unable to be here tonight because they are celebrating their son's 16th birthday party today. So happy birthday, Nicholas. About 10 years ago, the Feitzingers and I worked on a remodel in Palos Verdes Estates. And they enjoyed living in the newly remodeled house, raising their 4 children who went to school at PVP USD. A job relocation found them moving to Northern California, yet they had a desire to come back to PVE for retirement and fulfill their goal of living in a coastal...
I'm sorry, could you speak up again? I'm very
The mic
faint.
is very
Maybe
directional, yeah.
Yeah, just point it right at
Right
you.
at your mouth,
There you
yeah.
go.
Is this good?
That's better. Thank you very much.
All right, where were we? So a job relocation found them moving to Northern California, yet they had a desire to come back to PV Estates for retirement and fulfill their goal of living in a coastal community where their children and future grandchildren could come visit for the holidays. The home that's being designed will be a forever home for the homeowners, and the vision was to create an open, contemporary home to best utilize and capture the site's amenities. This project has preliminary approval by the art jury, and in August, the neighborhood meeting was held. Based on the feedback and discussions heard, several changes were made to the initially submitted plans, and those changes are currently reflected in the drawings that you have. Can I have the next slide, please? Now let's review the changes made to date since the neighborhood meeting. The garage plate height was reduced by 1 foot 6 inches, previously at 115.50 feet, down to 114 feet. This resulted in a ridge height reduction of 1.83 feet at the garage, previously at 121.17 to 119.34. The south wall of the garage was set back by 1 foot 6, and in effect, reduced the square footage overall by 34 square feet. The combined reduction in area, plate height, and ridge reduces mass and height and effectively opens up available view corridors. This lot being a downslope lot facing ocean views, several pockets of view corridors were intentionally created through broken up roof geometry, shortening the width of the proposed house relative to existing, and removal of existing overgrown vegetation. Now, we're not keen on removing large mature trees. However, they appear to be out of scale and neglected, and moreover block available views for the neighbors. While our initial proposal had a walkway that was designed around existing trees, the benefit to remove those trees seemed to outweigh keeping them in place. Next slide, please. The following additional changes were made at the neighbor's request. The chimney is now removed. The balcony at the master bathroom was reduced to standing room only and is now 21.5 inches in depth, previously at 5 foot 7 inches deep. Condenser units were relocated further north and away from 1517. Pool equipment is enclosed on all sides, and a portion of the proposed fencing along the west property line has been removed. Can I have the next slide, please? The photo on the left shows the western portion of the property with its current silhouette. As you can see, it's difficult to see the silhouettes between the existing trees, and most of the available existing views are obstructed by them. The proposed design is overlaid on the silhouette, and the existing house profiled with the magenta outline is shown on the image on the right. By reducing the overall width of the building footprint, a wider view corridor is created and increased by 3 foot 6 inches, capturing more of the preferred ocean views by that length. And last slide, please. Along the eastern portion of the street facade, the site topography rises in elevation. Again, the building width is reduced to create wider than average side yards for better privacy coupled with opening up view corridors. The photo on the left shows view corridors created with that magenta arrow. The image on the right demonstrates the coastline view gained by 7 foot 11 inches in length. Here you see the second view corridor through the roof. The perspective of this photo is about 5 feet above finished surface at the street. From 1508 and 1500, where the finished floor level is 114.73, that is 3 inches above the existing ridge height at the garage at 114.46 feet. The net gain in ocean view will be greater than what's visible here on the overlay image you see on the right. The site's amenities and size, the combination of 3 lots, and being on the downslope lot indicated there might be challenges during this process of neighborhood compatibility.
Okay, ma'am, your initial 5 minutes is up.
Okay,
You will have 5 additional minutes at the end.
okay, so that's fine. That's
Okay, do we have questions at this point for the applicant? On your last picture, it appears as though the house and the garage have been raised from the previous levels. Is that the case, or is it
That's
just?
correct. That's correct.
They have been.
They are raised. The proposed garage finished floor height is raised in comparison to existing.
How much is it raised?
It's about 5 feet.
Can I give you that number after I look through my drawings?
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay, and I'm sorry?
The color, I know is different for you guys on this side, so red and pink doesn't necessarily show up, it shows up on blue for you guys. I see pink, you see the line, that blue line.
There
Right.
we go, yeah.
Okay.
It is hard to see, yeah.
I have a question. Can you go back a couple slides that show the roof line being reduced by 1 foot? I think it's right there. So 1 foot, 1.83 feet. So the original height is, the question for the applicant is that to scale? That looks
Yes, it is to
a
scale.
lot more like than a foot to me, just
No,
following it.
it's to scale.
Okay, thank you.
But the roof line behind the garage is unchanged. So it still is
That's
at the
correct.
original height.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay.
And I'll get you that number after I.
Okay,
try to
you'll
read
have
my
5
small
more minutes,
drawing.
and we'll catch up to those questions and additional questions when you come back. Okay, I have several cards. I think the parties have tried to put them at least initially into an order, and so we will hear first from Tom Zimberoff, followed by Carrie Romer.
Good evening. I'm Tom Zimberoff, 1508 Chelsea Road. My wife Sandy and I have lived here for 20 years. We moved here for the charming neighborhood and the ocean views. I'm here tonight because the Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance exists for a reason, and while there are various factors in considering neighborhood compatibility, I'm here to talk about the preservation of my existing views. The design at 1505 Chelsea Road does not meet the city's requirements to make reasonable efforts to minimize the impact to neighbors' existing views. Slide 1, please. Are you on? You're on slide 1? Okay. Despite discussions at the neighborhood compatibility meeting, sending all photos requested by the owners, and a phone discussion, we do not see any meaningful change to the silhouette to remedy the view impacts. With the current design, we will lose all of our over-the-house views of the ocean, coastline, and mountains. Slide 2, please. The current design not only takes away our over-the-house views, it destroys the ocean, coastline, and city views on the right of the existing home. Slide 3, please. The owner has pointed out that the new proposed design is narrower than the existing house, stating that it provides a better side yard view. While the side yard on the left may be wider, it does not materially improve the left side yard view from our home, and in no way makes up for the views that we would be losing over the top of that house. Questions still remain as to any gates, walls, and other landscape that the owners may place on the left side of that house. This will impact our left side yard view. The proposed tree removals cannot occur without the appropriate approvals, and so the removals may not occur. The owners indicated that they will put in landscaping that will not grow above the constructed ridge height, Any landscaping that grows to the constructed ridge height in that left side is going to completely block our views. Based on these unanswered questions, I would like to repeat again that any improvements to the left side yard view is in no way makes up for all of the views lost over the home. We ask that any new, slide 4, please. We ask that any new house plan have ridge heights that do not exceed the original ridge heights across the sections of the existing house. Any increase to any of the existing ridge heights impacts and our existing over the house view, and the current silhouette takes them away completely. The loss of our views as a result of the current proposed design severely impacts the value of our property and diminishes the daily enjoyment of our home. We ask the Planning Commission to please enforce the Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance by denying this project.
Thank you. Okay, Carrie Romer, followed by Tim Romer.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Romer, and my husband Tim and I own the property at 1500 Chelsea Road, which is directly across the street from the proposed home. We've lived in our home for over 30 years and have always treasured our views. I don't need to tell anyone here how priceless that is in PV, looking at the water. And we really appreciate the neighborhood compatibility process and its focus on preserving existing views. Next slide, please. As referenced in many of the letters you received, a new 2-story home could easily be built at this location without impacting any of the neighbors. We are extremely impacted and lose essentially all of our horizon ocean views. We have found a variety of changes that would reduce these impacts, which Tim will detail a little bit later. Next slide, please. Here you can see we have a lovely horizon view over the current home of the ocean and the mountains beyond. And we have that view from our living room and several other primary viewing areas. And as you can see by the colored-in roof below, the views would be severely blocked by the proposed design. Next slide, please. Similarly, at night, our views would also be blocked. Our night views are as good or even better than our daytime views with the lights of Santa Monica and Malibu. Next slide, please. What we do not understand is why the owner needs to raise the finished floor over 5 feet and the roof up to 7 feet. From the existing finished floor elevation, their views are tremendous. If they kept the existing finished floor elevation at 100 feet where it is now and created a level underneath it, the lower level would have ocean views as well. Next slide, please. Their existing ocean views are not just straight out from the home, but far to the north and the south. These expansive views from the current finished floor are wonderful, and the floor does not need to be elevated for the views to be spectacular. Next slide, please. We have seen the Planning Commission focus on views from primary living areas, which are the views that we would lose. We have noted that in their design, the dining room, family room, kitchen, and master are on the upper level and would enjoy the views as shown before from the current finished floor elevation of 100. Please note the large deck also on this level that enjoys these views. Next slide, please. Their lower level design has no major living areas. Again, as shown before, this level could still have ocean views if the current finished floor was retained. Next slide, please, and I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Thank you. My name is Tim Romer, and yes, I am Carrie's husband. I want to thank the Planning Commission for coming to see the project in person, because I think it truly shows the efforts you take, and it hopefully showed you the dramatic impact to our views. I've spent a lot of time trying to read the plans and understand this proposal. I've also talked to a lot of outside experts. Our focus tonight is on the neighborhood compatibility finding D, or the requirement whereby the project must, to the extent reasonably practicable, tough word, not unreasonably interfere with the neighbor's existing views. I hope to convey to you tonight the way I see this, which is there's no way that finding can be found. Next slide. Here you see the existing home has 3 different ridge levels. And we have horizon views over each of them, with the best view being over ridge number 3. We also have existing channel views to the right of the house. But the narrowing of the proposed house does not increase the channel view by any meaningful account, which you saw from the slides earlier. There's less than a 5% increase in the channel view and a complete total loss of the horizon view. Next slide, please. We have done our best to estimate the existing elevations of ridge number 2 and number 3. They were not provided in the plans, as they are important to understand the view impacts of the project and what can be realistically and reasonably done to reduce them. Next slide. Rather than just complain about this project, we spent a great deal of time trying to come up with solutions. We went to neighborhood compatibility, we talked to the owner, we tried to find solutions. And we're not trying to design their new home, but rather show reasonable and practical solutions to reduce the view impacts. As shown in the various slides, the existing floor elevation at 100 provides tremendous 180-degree views for the proposed home, and it does not need to be raised. Keeping at the existing finished floor level of 100 brings the proposed ridge line down by 5.5 feet. Next, a combination of a lowered roof pitch and just a 3-inch reduction in the floor plate from 9 feet to 9.9 feet, or from 10 feet to 9 feet 9 inches, that can bring the ridge down to 114, which is the ridge level of view number 2 that I showed you previously. Keeping the finished floor at 100 for the new upper level still allows the new lower level to have ocean views, even though there is no primary living areas on the lower level, and to still have lots of light, as virtually all the windows on the lower level face the pool and the sports courts. There are various other reasonable solutions available, such as starting the home at the sport court level of 87, reducing the floor plates below 10 feet on one or both floors. There's lots of options to bring down the height of this home. Last slide, please. This slide shows, I think, a reasonable solution, is that if the ridge height is kept to 114, the red line you see here, we lose some horizon views on the right, and we're okay with that because we gain some horizon views on the left. It also shows the line at which we lose all ocean views, which is not very far above 114. As evidenced by the 17 opposition letters, this entire neighborhood, the people all here tonight, believe this project is just too high and needs to be lowered.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, we want to thank you for your time, and we encourage you to please direct the applicant to reduce the ridge line of this home to 114. This is reasonable, and it's practical, and it's in compliance with neighborhood compatibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now have Gail Keckler, and followed by Marilyn Cahill.
Thank you. My husband and I, Jean and Gail Keckler, have lived in the neighborhood at our house. How's that? Is that better?
Better. Thank you.
For 42 years. Tonight I have 7 items that I need to address, and I need to go quickly. I want to reiterate that this house does not fall into the section that is written, I believe it's 15, something like that, of neighborhood compatibility. All the houses on the block are of clapboard and stucco exteriors and are ranch-style homes. I believe, and my husband and I believe, the metal roof is out of character for all the shake and tile roofs that are on our street. My biggest issue is the height and privacy that I'm going to lose. I'm on the west side. When I look out of my bedroom, my family room, even my laundry room, I'm going to be looking at a 10-foot stucco wall. The ridge line then to the roof line is 15. I then will have no sun coming into that side of my house. I will feel like we live in a tunnel. And my concerns at that time would kind of lead to landscaping. What are the plans to landscape between each of our 2 houses? If they're allowed to go to a ridge line with landscaping, I've lost all, not view. I'm not here for view. I've lost all privacy. I'm not an engineer, but I have grave concern about the grading in the backyard. I see one retaining wall down by the sports court. This particular house has been left uncared for over 30 years. There is so much vegetation in the backyard that I presume is holding up the slope and the hillside. I have major concerns that there are no other retaining walls to keep it all from flowing down towards my pool. My pool is at, I believe it's 87, maybe 86. Their sports court is 87. I have major concerns about the fence that we share, which we have shared. It was the prior owner's fence, so it has been established as her fence. We just took it over. On the plan, you will see that the plan shows it's a straight line from the street all the way down to the alley. It is not a straight line. I have zigs and zags as it goes down the slope. All my concern is what is the property line and where will the future fence be put up?
I'm sorry, Ms. Keckler, you're going to have to wrap up.
Okay, I also, and it's already been said, I want to know if they have permits to get rid of the 2 city trees that the Fitzigers said they were going to get rid of, and the 2 property trees, the big eucalyptus trees. I thank you for letting me speak tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Okay, Marilyn Cahill, followed by Don Hughes.
First, thank you for your time and effort, the volunteering that you do. This is huge. I'm not going to duplicate because a lot of my previous neighbors have said neighborhood compatibility, height, et cetera, et cetera. What I am going to talk about is the impact emotionally when you do lose view. This is a project at 15, what's the address? In 2015, 1604. Next one, go ahead to the next one. The next one, and the next one. And that's what I was left with. And so it really is a very emotional loss when you have the peaceful looking, the ocean views. And for my situation, it was watching the people walk along the bluffs, entertaining themselves. It's gone forever. So I don't want that to happen to the Romers or the Zimmeroffs. And I think the fact that the options are there to grade down. I walked the property at the community meeting. There is plenty of space, plenty of, they can do it, but they have offered absolutely no lowering of ridge lines, and things would not impact their views. Anyway, I'm not against people having a lovely new home, and I support them, but I also think we should work very hard to maintain our neighborhood, which is really a ranch style, Spanish style, a little mid-century thrown in there, and this new structure is purely modern. And if it were lower, it wouldn't be as obnoxious. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Don Hughes, followed by Brett Dillenberg.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Don Hughes. I've lived in 1652 Paseo del Mar for 38 years, and I consider myself a neighbor of the Zimmeroffs and the Romers. Although this house doesn't impact me whatsoever, it impacts my neighborhood. Whenever I have friends come to see me from outside the city, they always are impressed with how well the neighborhood looks in this area. Particularly, I consider the neighborhood from Palos Verdes High School over to where Paseo del Mar and PV Drive West meet. So that Chelsea, Dalton Road, Avon, Chiswick, etc. And my biggest concern is the Zimmeroffs and the Romers would lose their view. When you move to Palos Verdes, you want to find a house that has a view. And you consider that that house will have that view forever. And when someone comes in and builds a house that obstructs your view for no particular reason, I find that to be not within the compatibility of what we're trying to do in Palos Verdes. So I would request that the house's ridgeline stay within the same compatibility height as the existing house, so that their neighbors across the street can have the view that they've had for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dillenberg, followed by Michael Sinclair.
Hi, I'm Brett Dillenberg, and my wife Carla and I purchased our home at 1405 Chelsea Road over 22 years ago. We are 2 houses up the street from the proposed project. Our views are not directly impacted, but we're here tonight to support our many dear neighbors who will be dramatically affected. We bought our home because of the amazing view. As a bonus, we have had the privilege of living in one of the most charming, unique, and cohesive areas in Palos Verdes. Our neighbors are all respectfully keep our trees trimmed to protect others' views, and recently we all worked together on a project to improve the views for the entire community. The proposed plan for 1505 Chelsea does not appear to try to preserve views for many of the neighbors. At the neighborhood compatibility meeting, it appeared that the architect and the owners were not aware of the devastating impact that the heightened roof line would have on so many of the homes. The recent changes do not appear to make any substantial improvement to address the fundamental view impact. This is a big, beautiful lot. There seems to be plenty of room to lower the house and work within the existing roof line, thus preserving valuable views for so many. I'm not an architect, but it appears there are several reasonable alternatives that would not require such a dramatic increase over the height of the current roof. To wrap things up, views matter. From the start of our city, the founding fathers recognized the importance of and tried to protect ocean views. I recently viewed the summary of the restricted covenants produced by the city in the late 1920s, and it refers to the number one priority of the restrictions was to, and I quote, to preserve ocean views. Let's figure out a way to uphold the spirit of the founders' vision so that everyone can enjoy their extraordinary views. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Michael Sinclair, followed by Rick Gwynn.
Good evening. I'm Michael Sinclair, living at 1520 Paseo del Mar. I was standing in this very same spot 23 years ago. When I wanted to build my house, I had to get approval from everybody here. And 33 people, including Merrill Cahill, came and complained about it. So the final analysis, we just reduced the height of the roof. And everybody was happy, right, Merrill? So I just suggest they reduce the height of the roof and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rick Gwynn, followed by Ted Vidmar.
There you go. Had to reset the clock. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Rick Gwynn. My wife, Marge, and I both live at 700 Apsley Road. We live on the corner of Apsley and Chelsea and Addison, the big white house in the corner. So we've lived there. We've lived at 700 Apsley Road and enjoyed a beautiful sunset views over the roof line of the subject property. This view is currently enjoyed from our front porch, our master bedroom, living room, and kitchen. Although our view is small, it will be completely eliminated by the proposal new build. We attended the architect and owners meeting where the plans were shared and the flags for the new silhouette were set. It was obvious to everyone that proposed plans severely impacted the views of the neighboring properties, while the current property owners already enjoy a 180-degree panoramic view. The owner of the building plans are not designed to gain a view. The owners already enjoy a magnificent view. We find it unfair that this view for so many are ruined for the benefit of one. We ask that the roof line is kept at the current level so that adjoining neighbors continue enjoying their view and our view as well. After that meeting, we received a letter from the owner outlining the changes they plan to make after hearing our concerns. On the surface, the letter portrays a lot of changes to address neighborhood compatibility issues. But in reality, they gave back a lot of things that never should have been in the plans to begin with, such as a chimney or putting the air conditioning by the neighbor's window. And they did nothing to truly address the real issues, the view impacts and the privacy. This is our request tonight. Please consider the views of the neighboring properties. Our view, enjoyment, and property values depend on it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. So we have Ted Vidmar, and batting cleanup is Sandy Zemberhoff.
Commissioners and neighbors, thank you for hearing us. I want to let you know that I do have a view corridor that will be impacted. I've lived in Palos Verdes Estates with my wife since 1988 and at our current location at 1509 Addison for the last 20 years. We live immediately behind the Romers at 1500 and the Zemberhoffs at 1508. Our elevation of our home is substantially higher than the Zemberhoffs and slightly more so than the Romers. Our view corridor is exactly situated between their two homes. We've recently engaged and have received a professional landscape redesign from Rick Deisel, who has wanted to make sure that we maximize that view corridor with the removal of some remaining vegetation to accentuate that particular view corridor. From our elevation, which includes views from 2 bedrooms and a living area, we will no longer have that view corridor out and see the ocean. We will have that substantially eliminated, and we will just have a skyline view. So I ask, and I did attend also the meeting that was held early to discuss the plans, and I listened intently to what would be the loss from reducing the floor level down to what it should have been, to where it presently was, and making other minor modifications. Narrowing the home and improving channels doesn't do anything for our slight ocean view. Finally, thank you to the Zemberhoffs, because as neighbors, you assisted us a couple years when we rebuilt our fence and removed a tree that also impacted our view line, our very modest ocean views. So thank you for your neighbor assistance, and I hope that you have the same consideration from your neighbors as you provided to us. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Sandy Zemberhoff.
Hello, I'd like to read a letter written by my neighbor Pat, who was unable to attend this evening. Dear Planning Commission, my name is Pat Ackerman and I live at 1512 Chelsea Road. I've lived in my home for 57 years. I'm grateful for the beauty of my tree-lined street, the charming houses, and the scenic views. I take my walks and have enjoyed the tranquility and beauty of this neighborhood every day for decades. Please consider my concerns regarding the project at 1505 Chelsea Road. It does not seem fair that the new property owner is allowed to choose a design, a house that does not meet neighborhood compatibility guidelines and impacts existing views of their neighbors. Slide 1, please. I have views of the water, the coastline, where I can see all the tiny houses, and the mountains, all of which I cherish. Is a piece of paradise that I take pleasure in seeing every day. My views will be impacted by this new project. My late husband, George, served on the Planning Commission years ago. He gave his time and energy, just as the Planning Commission members are doing today, to make decisions to preserve the beauty and charm of our neighborhoods. The proposed project at 1505 is just too tall. The proposed design will cause the loss of my view, which will be replaced in large part with a view of a steel roof. Slide 2, please. I ask that the new owners please find options to bring down their structure height. Please change the design so that it does not have an impact on my views as well as those of other neighbors. The views from my living room, master bedroom, and from my front porch steps are impacted. It is an upsetting loss. George enjoyed sitting on our front porch for decades while looking out at the view and saying hello to all the neighbors. I now enjoy sitting there too. The previous owner of 1505, Cynthia Gurman, would be saddened to see what is now happening to her Chelsea Road neighborhood. She loved her house as I do mine. I want to continue to see the beautiful view and enjoy the peaceful feeling I get every day when looking out my windows, just as I have for the past 57 years. This is what makes living in this community so special.
Thank you. So I just received an additional card, and I'm sorry, I can't read the last name. It's like Ann Markey? Okay, then you're the next speaker.
Good evening. You had mentioned at the beginning to not be redundant, so I don't have a lot to say, but I'm running on emotions because I'm looking at the pictures, and we're friends. My husband and I live at 1504 Addison Road, and it's very disturbing that Narita, the architect, really did not try to find any solution to help the Roemers or the Zimmeroffs out. And I think there could be a solution. The neighborhood compatibility meeting that we had, we took her up to the Roemers' yard and looked at what they were going to lose. And I'm just astonished about how she cannot try to lower that to see how different, that would make it to help everybody in the neighborhood. So I don't have a lot to say, as I said, but I support everyone that has spoken. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the architect then will have her remaining 5 minutes.
So there's been a number of comments that I'd like to address in my closing remarks. So the comment about possible resolution that wasn't discussed between the owners about height, reducing height. The owner actually had several meetings with 1500 and 1508. It was, I think, through Zoom. And it was virtually a position where 1500 and 1508 said they won't agree to anything that's lower, that's not at or lower than the existing ridge height. At which point the owner realized that there would be no resolution and height reduction from our initiative. So that's a comment that I'd like to address. And then also the comment about accuracy of the survey. So that was done by Bolton Engineering, an outside firm, and is surveyed, and there's actually, they get plat maps from the city. So the accuracy, you'd have to ask them for the accuracy, but they're usually fairly accurate. All right, so comment about the height being too tall and is tallest amongst average of comparable homes. So the proposed maximum ridge height at 120.88 feet is 5.41 feet above the existing highest ridge. The existing ridge height is 115.41. The proposed second floor plate height is 1 inch above the existing maximum ridge, and so the volume above the existing ridge with potential impact lies primarily at the pitched roofs. Data of projects approved from 2009 to 2019 within the city of PVE through neighborhood compatibility show that the proposed maximum building height at 25.4 feet sits right at average. The sampling was taken from lots above 15,000 square feet in size, and 60 were approved through neighborhood compatibility. The average height for those homes was 25.4 feet, equal to ours, and the median height at 25.8 feet. Another sampling was conducted to see whether the results differ if the lot sizes were closer to ours. Lots similar in size, plus or minus 15% of this lot, had 17 approved projects through neighborhood compatibility, and the average height there was 25.31 feet. A further study to reduce building height starts to direct the proposed design to be an outlier in comparison to sample data of approved homes in the last decade, similar in lot size, floor area, and building height. Another information to keep in mind is from the two sets of data sample, total residential square feet was also reviewed. Results told that amongst the 17 approved plans of lot sizes plus or minus 15% of this proposed design, show that our total area at 5,413 square feet and 4,848 square feet without garage is the second smallest submitted. The average was 7,400 square feet. Sampled from the 60 approvals with the lot size over 15,000 square feet, the proposed design is the seventh smallest. What happens if we look at the homes within the immediate 300-foot radius? Out of 33 homes, 8 have lot sizes 15,000 square feet or more, and the average size and total floor area is 3,720 compared to our 4,848. Amongst the 8 homes compared, most of the homes are on Paseo Del Mar, and the 3 on Chelsea, of which 2 have FAR that exceeds this proposal. I have one more comment. Am I running out of time?
Nope. Okay. Got a minute?
I have one more comment about proposed ridge height needs to be at or below, to address proposed ridge height needs to be at or below the existing ridge height. To do this would entail creating a sunken hole in the ground where the finished floor height of the lower level will be 88.59 feet, similar in elevation to the sport court, which is at the lowest part of the site. Pushing on the house that far lower, numbers from 6 to 8 feet were mentioned at the neighborhood meeting, would pretty much force this proposal to be scrapped. The garage access would be technically challenged, and as this is a retirement home, the program stipulates that the floor levels have no sunken or terraces floors for living spaces. The suggestion to lower ridge by that much is disproportionate, and given our findings from the data disclosed earlier, this would certainly set a precedent of exceptionally low height, an outlier amongst approved projects through neighborhood compatibility. Suggestions were made to move the garage to the backyard with a long driveway. This would take space away from the backyard, and the house was designed for the homeowners to enjoy the spaces available then and their families.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, and do you want me to address your comments earlier or your questions
Sure.
earlier?
Answer that
So
question.
it's 100 feet, sorry, I got to go back to this. So it's 3.66 feet in difference of finished floor. So it's 101.34 existing and 105 proposed. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for the architect at this point?
I've got a couple of questions. So I'd like to explore what sort of possible alternatives, were discussed with the owners. And I think we just heard you say that you had some initial conversations with some of the neighbors, kind of felt that their requests were unreasonable, it sounds like. But, this is a fairly unusual proposal in that only 18% of the total building coverage is used, right? And granted, it's a relatively large lot, but it's a fairly compact building in a sense. And it's broad. So I'm just wondering kind of what considerations were taken to try to mitigate some of the view impacts? Was it the location, the size, the breadth,
Yeah, definitely. So the floor floor plan, the footprint. The footprint is a high surface area to volume ratio. That automatically creates pockets of view corridors with the undulation on the approach. The approach is set back by 50 feet. And so where we set the finished floor level on the top, the upper level, and the lower level, I think it balances out, and you can see it in the cross section at a 0.2, I think is the cross section. You can see how that balances out. The proposed is in solid, and the existing is dotted. And so those are some of the considerations that were made. Initially, we had the first several iterations were much wider. It actually was wider than existing, and we used the SketchUp model and Google Earth, some other photos, and we understood, because of the large lot size, where it sits, it's a downsloping lot, that there would be impact that we would need to address. And obviously the owners, I think they worked pretty hard with some of the owners that had the most severe impact. We actually have record of several conversations and discussions made that basically the position was, unless you're at or below, it doesn't really work for us, is I think the position that we were told. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. The existing structure, the first floor plate is at about approximately 100?
The existing, yes, correct. It's at 100.
You're proposing the first floor plate be 105. Why does it need
105.5, I believe.
Yeah, why does it need to be 5.5 higher than what's currently there?
So it needs to be that way in order to balance out the two-story presence at an existing single-story residence. And so if we set it sunken just at the same ridge height, then we automatically have to create a sinkhole, lots of grading, and basically the lower level rooms will be surrounded on walls by three sides. That you'd be looking at something like that.
And you're also looking for a 10-foot ceiling height in the second floor as well as the lower floor?
Yes.
And one last question for you. With regards to the metal roof, can you tell me if there's any other metal roofs in the neighborhood?
There's one right on Paseo Del Mar. I think if you turn the corner, there's one right there.
You're talking
There's
about the French
several.
Normandy house?
No, the one adjacent to it. I think it's the one with like a C curve almost.
Okay.
I have a question. What is the sport court for?
It's a multi-court. It'll be outlined for like badminton, volleyball, and basketball. I think their son is a basketball player, so that would be the main use, but they also play volleyball.
Is it a pickleball court as well?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't know what that is, actually.
Okay, no, it's just got the perfect dimensions for it, and
Okay.
I just wanted.
But it is outlined as a multi-court, so if that is what the multi-court is outlined for and they can use it that way, I don't know that it won't be used as a pickle court or pickleball court.
So it seems like the design of the house is driving the problem. And that is you've got the first floor finished height higher, you've got 10-foot plates in the first and second floor, and you've got a 412 roof. And it seems to me that in each of those areas, certainly, the pitch could be reduced, the plate heights could be reduced, and there could be some lowering. Now, maybe that doesn't fit your current design, but what I'm struggling with is the current design substantially, and I think unreasonably, impacts the views of neighbors in the surrounding area. The other thing I've noticed is that it looks as though there's a lot elevation from west to east, 102.9 to about 108.69. It's about 6 feet. Has any consideration been given to flipping the wings of the house and moving the garage to the west side?
We did, but I think the strategy there was by placing the garage in the southeast corner, and we realized that corner is probably the area where there's little view available on the property. And therefore, that mask,
Well, but it
and
would
if we
seem
place
to
the
me
garage there, we
that-
could manipulate the mask. There would be no windows in the garage, hardly any windows in the garage, and we can manipulate garage height. Because I think the strategy was to continue the roof line, which the art jury likes to see, sort of clean roof lines. And when we lowered that garage, I think that helped I think that helped the view from 1508 and 1500.
The issue I have with that is you lowered the front of the garage, but not behind it. So there's really no difference at all.
But it also depends on the view angles, I think. You don't have a straight shot view, so you're not really looking at the gable end of the higher.
So you and your client have visited the homes of the neighbors across the street, and you've observed the views?
We did at neighborhood. I did not enter their living rooms, but I was in front of their homes at our neighborhood meeting.
Yeah,
and the owner had.
If you haven't taken the time, I'm sure these neighbors would graciously invite you in for you to take a look at what many of us saw when we visited. And personally speaking, there's a fairly significant view impact that I think you need to be well aware of and consider. Okay, any other questions for the architect? Okay, I think we'll conclude the public hearing and begin our deliberations. Who wants to take the lead?
I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
I think we have hard ones and we rarely have easy ones. But I think this one actually might be an easy one. The impacts are very significant. And I think we have the view impacts to the neighbors behind. And I think we have almost zero evidence or zero ability to make a finding that any sort of reasonable mitigations have even been attempted here. And, I think one of the things that's most striking to me is that the homes in front of the applicant's home are what I would call sort of mature homes. And by that I mean they are already sort of maximally built. They're two-story homes. They are fairly large. They have unobstructable ocean views. So it's extremely unlikely that the homes in front of this home are going to get much bigger. And I always kind of look at that in kind of looking at these decisions because, we're kind of splitting equities, in a lot of these view decisions. And if there were sort of an immediate risk that a year from now, the owners of the applicant's home could be facing a view blockage because somebody in front of them is building, I think we have to take that into consideration with what they're going to invest into it. But I think that the risk of that is close to zero. And so based on that, then I think we have to go and look at, what do they have and what are they taking away from others? And what they have right now at their current finished floor level is a great view. It may not be the best view in Palos Verdes, but it's a very good view. And it's largely unobstructed. And again, I think really unlikely to change much, and get much worse because of the homes in front of it and the current state that they're in. So where that then kind of leads me is every inch they take away from the neighbors is really kind of entirely for their benefit and entirely to the detriment of the neighbors behind them. And again, it's very difficult to justify that. And we really didn't hear anything from the applicant that they even really attempted to do any sort of mitigation. So, the other thing that's kind of striking here is we have the 18% building coverage. It's very low. It kind of implies that they have something that's sort of too tall. And I will say somehow this one strikes me as being both too tall and too spread out. I'm not exactly, I think I said at the beginning this is sort of an easy one. I actually think that the appropriate ridge height for this building site is roughly where the current house is. Maybe, it's a foot taller or 18 inches taller or something like that to accommodate a, taller modern ceiling or, some other minor thing like that. But I really don't think that anything even approaching, the 5.5 feet or so that's being asked for is appropriate. I'd keep it either basically to the current ridge height or within a foot. I'd leave it there, and there's some more work that has to be done, but I think at a minimum that's a starting position.
I can say I agree with a lot of the things that the commissioner just said. I performed a site visit at the proposed property, as well as 1500, 1508, 1512, and 1520, 1517 Chelsea Road, and 1509 Addison Road. The project proposes 2,085 square feet on the first floor and 2,763 square feet on the second, as well as the garage on the second level, creating view issues that need to be mitigated for neighboring properties and neighborhood compatibility issues. Typically, in transitional neighborhoods, we ask that the home's second level be stepped back and more of the home be located on the first level to mitigate view and massing issues. The project proposes using only 18.7% of the allowable 30% building lot coverage. I believe it's reasonable and practicable to relocate second-story square footage to the first level, thereby increasing the building lot coverage and reducing view impacts. Another factor contributing to the view impacts is the I shape of the house across the entire lot. This creates essentially a straight line across the horizon for neighboring properties, removing their ocean views. Homes on this side of the street are nestled down into their lots, creating a terraced effect in this neighborhood. Raising the front yard close to street level is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Plate heights can also be reduced, as well as the roof pitch can be decreased. If the applicant wishes to use only 18.7% of the building lot coverage, then I believe it's reasonable and practicable to ask the applicant to grade the first floor level down into the lot, thereby reducing the ridge line and respecting neighboring views. This is a large lot, but a lot of the outdoor entertaining areas are also in the setbacks. I think we've had problems with courts and moving it out of the side setback. I know it's at the 51 feet and you're allowed to do it 50 feet away, but I think that this is a large lot and moving it out of that setback might mitigate some of the issues. And I also don't understand why some courts have fences around them and some don't. So that's something I'm just curious about. If it's a basketball court, I'm not so worried. If it's pickleball, then I'm worried. So I don't exactly know how we handle that, but I just think that there's options. This is a great lot, and it's just difficult with the design of the home going all the way across at the same level. It wipes everything out. So the one thing that's nice is the center of the house is narrower. So theoretically, you have 9-foot plate heights, and you bring the roof pitch down, that's another foot, and you lower the bottom floor 2 feet, you're kind of at the 5.
Yeah.
So we're not saying you have to lower it all the way down to the sport court, but we're saying that this isn't a neighborhood with 10-foot ceilings. This isn't a neighborhood with, there's just certain things. So I think that there are options for you, and I'd like to see it come back to us with some different options, possibly. Thanks.
I'm going to follow my earlier directive to you and not be redundant. I think my two colleagues on each side who have spoken already largely have encompassed my very thoughts. Like both of them, I visited several neighbors in the neighborhood. The Romers, the Zimberoffs, the Ackerman, Pat Ackerman, the Kecklers, the Vidmars, et cetera. Also had a chance to go on the property at 1505, as well as to go on the lot to the right of it, which is the people were out of town, but the Romers took us over. So I've had a good chance to look at what's there, and if you look at the data about the proposed size of the house, the lot coverage, the building coverage, and so forth, statistically the house is within city guidelines. And the height of the house is within city guidelines. But and you do a data analysis on averages with homes that basically were built, decades ago, and very few have been totally redone in the 300-foot radius, you're going to come in with numbers that show you're quite compatible, but you're not in this proposed design. And the impact on the scenic views from the neighbors, especially across the street, the scenic view impacts are simply not acceptable. And I think all of us have indicated some ways that you might be able to mitigate with plate heights, with roof ridges, with roof pitch. I think it can be graded down. Perhaps you can kind of shift the design of the house somewhat. There's progress to be made in this. I don't know whether you're going to, get this project down to the current ridge height. I don't know that that's reasonable, but as my colleague, my vice chair colleague said, that I think, to that ridge line or perhaps a foot more, if you can do that, we may have an approvable project. The other thing I would mention is I'm really sensitive to the height and mass of the house along the side of the Kecklers. They have a bedroom, main living area on the east side of their house. I think it's the east side in the back. And the massing of the second floor, it's just, you look out and you look like you're looking at a commercial building almost. It just is right there. And I'm concerned about that massing at that location and issues with regard to privacy. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done. I think there are some options, and what I'm hearing from my colleagues is that we don't have a consensus that would support approval of this project tonight. So I think what we can do, if my other colleagues are in concurrence, is perhaps to offer you a continuance to our next regular meeting, if you so choose, or we can vote to decide the matter tonight.
I have one other comment, observation. My initial thought was the square footage might be an issue, but I think it fits fine within the size of the lot in the neighborhood. But I am concerned about the metal roof fitting into the neighborhood. I don't think that fits into the, while there may be some in the neighborhood on that specific block, there's no building that has the metal roof. And I think that's not compatible with what the architecture that neighborhood is.
Unfortunately, the archery has told us that that's their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I don't like the metal roofs either, although I don't hate them as much as I used to. I've sort of given up on it a little bit, but
doesn't fit as far as compatibility.
I like the color of the wireless facility pole, right? Something. Get your nose out of it, right?
Yeah. One other thing too, the deck creates a gross square footage issue, right? And so anytime you see a really large, I mean, this is a really large deck, and anytime you see a deck that big, a lot of the time it's contributing to the overall impact. And I again, for me, it's about the height of the building. I think you could almost build the same building if you just pushed it down 5 feet or so, but if you're going to try to keep elements of it higher, I think you've got to look at all those points. And I do think the sport court is something, especially if it's going to have a fence around it, that could be impactful. And even if it doesn't, the noise and other things. But, we need to talk to the archery about the metal roof thing.
Christian?
Yeah, I cannot support this project as applied. Lots of issues here. I agree with almost everything that's been said. I think one issue about the pickleball actually is important, because pickleball, although it's a popular sport, has been shown to be a noise issue with neighbors just based on how loud the paddle and the ball.
Right.
So I would want to look into that a little bit more. The data that Ms. Narita, you presented about, stats from other properties. You used Palos Verdes Estates as the sample, and I think really this is the neighborhood, which is the folks that are sitting across from you, and really the neighborhood from Chelsea to Chiswick along, Apsley to Chiswick and, to the ocean and behind. That's what we're talking about here, is the neighborhood, and does this fit the compatibility? And I just don't think it does. The height and the views are all egregiously, I believe, being impacted. And what my final thought is your opening statement about the applicant's family wanting to move back to Palos Verdes because of all the things that your neighbors or their neighbors are talking about is why they love living here, is exactly what they're going against with this design. And that to me is a non-starter for this. So I would encourage you to go back to the drawing board and figure out what you can do to mitigate those issues. Visit the neighbors' houses, go inside their houses if they'll let you, and see exactly the views that are going to be impacted, because they could easily be in the same boat. The applicants, if a neighbor in front of them on the ocean side on Paseo del Mar wants to go up and do something that impacts their view, they're going to be sitting on this side of the pew with the same concerns about their view being impacted, maybe perhaps in the years in the future. So that concludes my feedback.
I have one other thing to add, because we keep talking about, maybe go up this much or what have you. The issue with this project, right, with the house that's there now, is when we say go up, there's different ridge lines. So we're not just talking about maybe from the maximum ridge line. It's, you got to pay attention to what's there and how you mitigate things, I think, because
There's some side views.
Yeah, we're not just saying that, well, find the maximum on this house and go up from there. We're saying, first, we don't know the exact answer, but we're saying, talk to the neighbors and see what you can do. Thank you.
So I think at this point, based upon the commissioner's comments, I think what we can do is offer you a continuance to the next regular meeting of the Planning Commission. You're nodding acceptance of that? Yes. Okay. So do I have a motion to continue this matter to the November, what is it?
15th.
18th Planning Commission meeting?
I'll make a motion to continue it to the November 15th.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The matter's continued to November 18th. And that concludes our agenda. And I thank you all for your patience, for your participation. Quite frankly, I know it's a late night for you guys, as it is for us. But the fact that you have come and you have shared your views with us really helps us make a better decision. So thank you very much. And good night. Drive safe.
Thank you.